to have you. Kindly interact with us. I'll be sampling some of your comments as we continue with the broadcast also later on. Very important that we discuss matters finances. Being a Tuesday, it is good that we understand what is there for us, so that even as we blame the government for the tough financial times, that even the little that we get, we are able to manage it well for the sake of making sure that we do not get to levels that we can't manage. So that's what we'll be looking at. Before then, allow us to look at the papers this morning. The Standard newspaper, the People Daily, as well as the Daily Nation are the papers that we have this morning, and we briefly look at some of them and we get to unpack what are these big stories, what they mean, and then we'll be delving into the conversation with the gentlemen that joined me this morning. The Standard newspaper, Tuesday, April on 11th, 2023. Keane fight over billions. A family of billionaire John Keane is fighting in court over inheritance. Children of the first wife are claiming a larger share owing her contribution in the marriage. That is the key story, a story captured on page 45. Such cases are quite known, and we ask ourselves just what really informs this. Sometimes you are advised it's good to just leave your family, with a proper will that speaks to how you just get to, distribute what it is that you have managed to take. But this is an interesting story there. In case interested, you would always grab a copy. Bipartisan talks top of agenda as members of parliament resume duty from recess. A story captured on page 7. That also will be following up on to get to know how best to unpack the same. Remember, it's been about the bipartisan talks for the better part of last week, and we hope that this then will be resolved so that we don't get ourselves back to the streets, looking at the threats that have been given by the Azimio One Kenya Alliance side. On this or that side, a Akode from Madam Boss to Mrs. Omosh in style. We all witnessed that grandiose wedding, and of course we can only wish them nothing but the best. Away from it, Ruto's big test to fix the economy lying in ruins, and that the president returns to a full tray, indicating an economic crisis after admission that there is no money to run the government and pay salaries with economy in a mess and a broke civil service. His work is cut out. A story captured on page 6 on this Easter blues for the government and for the president. Will be unpacking that as well, discussing that, just to see to it that we have ways of making sure that instead of pointing the fingers at the president or at the government, then at least something is being done even at that individual level for us to address the same. Boda calls or call a national demos after boss killing. That Willis Mugambi was leading protests in Chuka town when it is said police shot and killed him. Riders want the officer apprehended or go to the streets. It's not been a good scene to see, and of course we also 2 days of chaotic experiences in Chuka, and we can only hope that then justice is served. Those are the key stories on the daily the Standard newspaper. We have the Daily Nation here. The Daily Nation, history in the making as Kenya's Taifa One satellite goes live. You can now follow the launch on social media. Story captured on page 3. Historic moment in the world of technology. We'll certainly be looking forward to see what it unpacks, in terms of potential and possibilities for the people of Kenya. Armed bandits storm hospital and release patient in daring 2 a.m. incident. That's a story captured on page 11, and we ask ourselves, just what will it take for us to be able to tame the bandit attacks on these areas that have the prone cases of banditry? We'll also be looking at that to just get answers as to same. But then again, looking at this scenario, it clearly speaks of a problem of security, as we all hope that it will be addressed. And workers went to Easter holiday without much salaries, with counties hard hit. That is a story that is captured on the front page that we are looking at. That is on the front page of the Daily Nation, and we continue to unpack it and discuss it because it's the main story of the day in relation to what the government needs to do to address the troubles that we have as a country, and that is economic-wise. Unprecedented times that thousands of government employees had to push the National Treasury to release their salaries. Of course, this at a point when everyone is struggling to survive because of the high cost of living, and we ask ourselves, just how then is the government intending to address this? This delayed for up to about 3 months, even as President Ruto's administration faces a massive cash crunch. That is captured on page 6 and page 7, and the main story that we'll be looking at this morning. This is a students' health plan on verge of collapse, and that the government sponsored medical cover for public secondary school students risks collapse due to funding and logistical challenges. A parliamentary report shows this also is a story that is on the front page, expounded on the back page, and we'll be looking to see how best this as well will be addressed. Away from it, when children born out of wedlock fight to property, many children born out of wedlock by secret spouses and who stage legal battles against their first families for a stake in the estate of their fathers have been getting courts backing in their quest for inheritance. This is a story captured on page 4. Whether a plus or not, well, it depends and is always unique to different families. Will this be the turning point? Well, President William Ruto will today chair a crucial meeting to decide the fate of ceasefire talks with Azimio chief Raila Odinga. This even as a ruling coalition leader yesterday restricted the agenda to recruitment of poll commissioners, setting the stage for a battle with the opposition. That President Ruto will name his representatives in the bipartisan talks at a Kenya Kwanza parliamentary group meeting slated for this morning after Mr. Odinga nominated 7 members of parliament, that is to represent the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition last week. And we all know the names of these 7. And this is a story captured on page 4 of the Daily Nation. And we certainly are looking forward to see how different a conversation it will be. What they said, that we agree that a balanced process spearheaded by members of parliament from both sides and backed by experts is an appropriate way to proceed, and the end product will then be presented to parliament for approval. On the other side, the president says that we cannot hold talks outside the law. That is why I am saying that we should allow members of parliament who we elected to hold bipartisan talks to solve any pending issues with our colleagues. That is what we'll be looking forward to discuss also as we await to see or to get updates on what will play out in relation to the same. We're trying to get a hold of the People Daily just to see what it has in store this Monday morning. Ruto meets Kenya Kwanza allies to craft a team for talks. That is one of the key stories that we have right here, and we'll be following up on the same to keep you updated as well. Speaker blocks CAS's in a new rule, and this is a story that is captured on the front page, that no, you can't. Wetangula says embattled state officers are not allowed to answer questions on floor of house. A story captured on page 4 of the People Daily. Remember, it's not all been easy for the CAS's to settle in office, an adjustment upwards from the Kawaida 20 and going to around 50 something that many people have complained about, and also a series of challenges in court in relation to just how legit this office is one of the key things that we'll be looking at also as we continue with the broadcasts. And of course, end of Easter, suddenly everyone swings to action. It is work, it is work, it is work. Every good thing has to come to an end. And yes, indeed, a majority of Kenyans, marked yesterday as the last moment of Easter, and also celebrating, the resurrection of Christ in the best way they know. Retailers most likely to abuse rights of consumers. This also is captured on the front page, and they speak of new survey that indicates also on how businesses are conducted. Gachagua to preside over anti-alcoholism meeting. That also is a story on page 2 of the People Daily. There are concerns that alcohol and drug abuse is ruining many lives in the central side of this country. That is the central region. We'll be following up to see what it entails. The Senate passes change to rules, allows CSs to appear for plenary sessions. That's a story that has been captured on the front page and as well expounded there. And of course, this has challenged. We will be looking forward to see what happens. Those one, the first story was on the CASs, and this one is on CSS, yes, the cabinet secretaries, and we'll be following up to see what will then be the ultimate solution to this. Relief for Kajiado herders as rains pound. Certainly a good report right there that we seek to have even more, and very many stories as captured. Ruto Group to pick team for bipartisan. Be looking forward to see what happens to that. We do not recognize Baraza as ODM chairperson. Oparanya says that is the Kakamega governor. Interesting times also as they warm up to working with the government. Stiff penalties await rustlers in Parliament if Parliament enacts a new bill, and Nani Senator Chergei tables livestock bill to tackle wanton theft and that is rampant across the country. And these are the key stories, as you can see. NHIF boss in crosshairs over investment laws, as well as many other stories as captured on the papers this morning. Allow us to now shift gears and take a look at the stories that my team has prepared this morning as we wait for the guests. That Easter Monday, a significant day for Christians worldwide, is celebrated and observed as a public holiday in Kenya. Many Kenyans take this opportunity to spend quality time with their loved ones. However, during a spot check conducted by our reporter Amida Yakub in the country's capital, a low turnout was observed in social places as business activities continued in the lower part of Nairobi, contrary to what you would expect on normal occasions.
Monday, the Christian faithful took the day off to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ, but in Kenya's capital it was a normal day for the better part of the day, with the city remaining deserted.
Pasaka ya hii mwaka 2023 mimi naona ni tofauti sana, sababu compare na ile ya 2022 ya last year. Hiyo uwanja ilikuwa inajanga, so vile nimekuja hapa sababu nimekuja adhuhuri, mimi naona kama uwanja ijaja compared to last year.
In the lower parts of the city along Jogoo Road, businesses remained open with a beehive of activities. In a spot check at the Green Park, a favorite spot for families taking their children out, a small number of city residents who had visited the area with business persons who were looking forward to a big payday during this year's Easter holiday, registering their disappointment.
Ambapo sasa sai pale ndani kuko na miaka miwili kabla hiyo mambo ilikuwa inafanywa renovation ianze, sasa ni miaka mbili. Sina kibarua, na pia mimi tegemeo yangu ilikuwa ni wapi? Ni huko. Niko na familia na watoto wawili wananitarajia. Saa hii ile mapato yangu nilikuwa ninapata haiko.
Nafanya kazi hapa Uhuru Park. Ni Pasaka and we wanted to come tuchore watoto, tuwauzie toys na kila kitu, wakuja bouncing castle. But as in from Friday hakuna anything tumepata, kazi iko chini. Wakristo wamejifungia kwa manyumba watokezei. Na miaka hiyo ingine tumekuwa tukifanya kazi imekuwa, but this year hatujui tufanye nini.
Despite the hues and cry over the cost of living by the majority of Kenyans have turned out with their loved one to celebrate Easter holiday.
And parents who had opted to bring their children for an outing despite the pinching tough economic times had very little in their pockets but dared to have memorable moments for their little ones. The businessmen and women who had turned up to work normally despite the day being observed as holiday by many, it was a business as usual for them, even though many said that they have made very little, though it was still worth it due to tough economic conditions. Amida Yakub, TV 47.
Now, two factions clashed in Umoja over new stalls that were erected along Manyanja Road by a private developer. One section of the group claimed the developer had constructed the stalls along a public road, causing traffic congestion and blocking the drainage system that serves the residents of Umoja and Dunhome Estate. The situation escalated to running battles, destruction and looting of property, prompting a police intervention to calm the situation. Moigi William was on the scene and provides further details.
Manyanja Road leading to Umoja Estate turned into a battleground on Monday as two rivals groups clashed over newly constructed stalls. The situation quickly escalated into running battles as the contested construction was set ablaze by unknown perpetrators, reducing more than 10 stalls to ashes and destroying property of unknown value. The two rival groups barricaded roads using burning tires and stones as all hell broke loose, with a section of residents following the dramatic events from the rooftops of their residence. After hours of confrontation, it took the intervention of police officers to calm the situation, which was quickly escalating towards a fierce confrontation.
Mkondo wa mawe, mkondo wa kuchoma tairi, mkondo wa kufunga barabara, mkondo wa kuumizana havisaidii chochote. Haitakusaidia, haitawasaidia. Kwa hivyo na nyinyi munisikize, naenda kuwaongelesha kwamba we need peace and law to be followed.
The agitated groups were advised by the law enforcers to use the stipulated channels to air their grievances, with the matter in contention being the construction of stalls along a road reserve.
Kama kuna anything imejengwa bila kufuata sheria, sikiza, mimi sina nguvu ya kusema itolewe. Ni nyinyi muende mufuate mkondo wa sheria, mupate document ambayo inasema watolewe. Watatolewa. So mumesikika, sauti yenu imesikika. Yes. Naomba amani. Amani. Sawa.
The private developer responsible for the contested construction was accused of building the structure along a public road and destroying public amenities that benefited the surrounding society. The government was called upon to intervene in the matter and expeditiously resolve it, as it had resulted into a stalemate between the two warring factions.
Tunaomba haki, vibanda zitolewe zote. Mtu hawezi toka nje akuja jenga katikati ya barabara. Tunaomba vibanda zipomolewe na tutaki tena kuwaomba tafadhali zipomolewe.
Na tunaomba serikali wale wanaokuja kugrab kama hawa wangefuatiliwa na hizi manyumba sitolewe kabisa.
After hours of push and pull, at least for now, police officers have managed to calm the situation, order and tranquility being restored. Moige William, TV 47, Nairobi.
Now, at least 3 people have been killed by bandits in Samburu County Monday as tension keeps rising due to back-to-back attacks reported in the area in the recent past. As Kenyans celebrated Easter holiday in different ways, residents of Morijo and Lorian villages in Samburu are living in fear after bandits struck, killing 3 and injuring another 2 people, as Micah Gongo details.
Residents of Morijo and Lorian villages in Samburu are living in fear after bandits struck, killing 3 people and injuring another 2 at 1 p.m. Monday. Easter holidays here turned to a sad Monday after 1 person was shot dead at Morijo, while 2 were killed at Lorian villages.
Hivi kwamba watu wengine wanasherekea leo Easter na sisi tunasherekea maiti na kifo mbele ya macho yetu.
Residents now saying that the fight against banditry appears far from over if the recent criminal activities in the volatile region are anything to go by. The bandits were able to maneuver through the heavy security presence in the region, consisting of officers drawn from Kenya Defence Forces KDF and the National Police Service NPS.
Nataka kusema kwamba tumepoteza watu wengi tangu operation tangazwe. Na sijui ni kama operation imekuwa operation na kuja kutangaza maiti katika nchi ya Samburu na vitongoji vyake.
Sisi naona sijawahi kuona maneno kama hii. Sababu sasa sisi ni kupotesha watu. Operation hii imepotesha watu zaidi hata bila walikuwa hatuna silaha.
Residents say in the recent past, bandits have been launching simultaneous attacks in different regions to outsmart security officers. This in the end thins out the security presence in the regions, making it possible for the bandits to steal livestock.
Afadhali serikali ya operation iende, jeshi iende, askari wote warudi. Ili tujulinde, maana hata mbele kabla hawajakuja hatakuwa na kifo kama hii. Hatakuwa tunakufa kila siku.
Watoto wamehangaika, kina mama wamehangaika, wazee wamehangaika. Serikali hatuoni mai ile kitu ambao unatufanyia.
The raids continue to intensify despite the government's effort to quell the menace in Samburu, Turkana, West Pokot, Baringo and Elgeyo Marakwet counties. On Monday last week, the bandits in another daring move raided former National Assembly Speaker Francis Ole Kaparo's home, which is located near a police station. In the past 1 month, over 10 people have been killed and about 1,500 families displaced from their homes in Samburu West constituency, Samburu County. The bodies of the 3 have been moved to the Samburu County Hospital morgue. Elsewhere, the multi-agency teams undertaking a security operation including the Kenya Defence Force, General Service Unit and the Anti-Stock Theft Unit have taken over patrols at the war-torn Laminyosi area along the Kitale-Lodwar Highway in West Pokot County, after 5 people were on Thursday last week killed by suspected bandits.
Hivi majuzi ndo tulipoteza hapo watu 5, wamama wakiwa 2, wazee 3.
Sisi melala jana, leo peke yake. Sinkisi akaingilia, lakini kwa siku ile ukimsema hakuna mwenye lilala hata siku moja hivi.
Hata ukiangalia umeona vile anaongea, ukiangalia kina wale wengine wenye walikuwa mbeleni. Wanajua hii mdomo huwezi kusaidia, instead inaumiza watu. Inaumiza maendeleo, inaua.
Uncertainty still remains at Laminyosi as villages remain deserted, businesses closed and hundreds who are displaced fleeing the area. Mike Kagwongo, TV 47.
Now, there is growing concern over 2 cases that were brought on board. Let's allow us to pick this. Yes, 2 schools in the western region of Kenya were both reported to have burned down at nearly the same time. The first incident occurred at St. Peter's Boys High School in Mumias, Kakamega County, followed by fire alarms at Kivaiwa Boys High School. As a result, the majority of the students from both schools have been left without bedding, forcing them to use the school's dining hall as makeshift dormitories. Robert Adur gives us more details on the story.
The first fire case was reported at St. Peter's Mumias High School after burning down one of the dormitories and leaving majority of the students without beddings. This was followed by a second outbreak at Kivaiwa Boys High School, both happening at the same time. County Director of Education Dickson Ogonya, who was saddened by the unfortunate event, warned the students who were indisciplined, further assuring the public that the school management will do everything within its power to bring the culprits to book.
I also want to be very candid on this. If there's anyone amongst you here who feels that you don't like this school, tell your parents to get you out. Yes. Or you leave. Yes. Don't ban so that the rest live with you. Just leave. You came here alone and leave alone.
This is not the first time that St. Peter's Mumias High School has been affected by fire, and parents are worried as this is the 3rd time. They are now calling on for swift action to be taken to prevent such occurrences from happening again.
Na tukiangalia kwa hizi dormitory, tunaona kama kuna CCTVs. Na tuko na uhakika kwa kwamba wakati tuliingia kwa hii shule tuliambiwa security iko.
Hidi mara 3 kuchoma. Na kuna inside job watu wa village hapa wana collide na watoto hapa kuchoma shule.
Local leaders, including Kakamega Deputy Governor Ayub Savula and County Women Representative Elsie Muhanda, have called for those involved in the fire outbreaks to be arrested and tried in court.
We want to take action now. Whoever is involved, starting from if a teacher is involved, shauri yake. Kama if a student is involved, shauri yake. If he is a board member, shauri yake.
Spare the road, spoil the child. Hatuta spare road. Wale wameshikwa mpaka kotini. Direct.
The cause of the fire is not yet known, and investigations are underway to determine what led to the outbreak. Fortunately, no students were injured in the incident, and learning will continue as normal.
We are not going to close the school, but we are going to provide some of your amenities from today and tomorrow so that learning continues as usual.
Norbert Oduor, TV 47.
Now, a section of residents of Nakuru has expressed concern and caution to the ruling coalition Kenya Kwanza regarding talks that could potentially result in a weak opposition. The residents organized under the Kenya Internally Displaced Persons, that is the group that believe that weak opposition would be detrimental to a democracy that is striving for inclusivity and fairness. Chichi Josephine with more.
Early last week, President William Ruto prevailed upon Odinga to halt weekly protests across the country and give dialogue a chance over a raft of contentious issues, a proposal that was welcomed by the opposition. However, the move has elicited mixed reactions from many different quarters. A section of Nakuru residents has now called on President Ruto's administration to ensure a vibrant opposition that will play its constitutional role of oversight on the government elected on the platform of equity for all and participatory governance.
Azimio la Umoja ni opposition. Opposition ni huko upande ule mwingine ukosoe. Lakini kusema kuwa kuna mijadala inayohusiana na Kenya Kwanza pamoja na Azimio, hiyo ni kuua opposition ama kulemaza serikali iliyo mamlakani.
The residents have challenged the opposition leader Raila Odinga to marshal political parties under the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition to suggest practical and sustainable solutions to the high cost of living and concerns around the composition of an agreeable electoral body.
Isiwe ni mjadala leo na kesho tena wamegeuka. Uwe ni mjadala ambao wanapitisha kitu ambacho kinasaidia mwananchi wa kawaida.
Tafadhali uchumi wa nchi yetu umlikuwa umezoroteka sana. Kitu kizuri ni Kenya Kwanza iweze kutimiliza ahadi zote zile ilipatiana. Tunastahili kusikia wakiuliza Kenya Kwanza mambo ya agriculture kama wakati huu ambapo tuko na msimu wa mvua.
They argue that taxpayers cannot afford another bloated coalition government as the country is saddled with foreign debt, struggling to bridge deep ethnic rifts and is still healing from the devastating economic aftershocks of COVID-19.
Hiyo tunajua ni hila ya opposition na government kutafutia wenzao wale walipoteza kwa uchaguzi nafasi za kazi kwa Kenya Kwanza kumuongezea mwananchi wa kawaida mzigo.
Hii maisha ya kutaka kutengeneza mikutano ambayo haina faida kwetu sisi, tafadhali ikome. Tunataka maisha ambayo kesho tutakuwa na wito, tutakuwa na kitu ambacho tutakuwa tunajifunia kama wananchi wa Kenya kwa ujumla.
Hii mijadala ni ya kuchukua ambayo wanaanzisha, ni ya kuchukua muda tu. Na mwisho watasema tumekubaliana. Na huku kukubaliana mwananchi atakuwa wapi?
Chichi Josephine, TV47.
Now, Bungoma County elected leaders have rubbished Kenya Kwanza government's plan to privatize Nzoia Sugar Company, stating that it's the only company that the Western Region residents currently depend on. Led by an area governor, Kenneth Lusaka, instead have urged the government to waive all the company's debts, pay farmers, and install new machines in the company's factories, as Sustin Wanji details.
Speaking after Easter prayers which were held at Kibabi University on Monday, Bungoma elected leaders led by Governor Kenneth Lusaka have rubbished the government's plan to privatize Nzoia Sugar Company.
Msimamo ni kwamba mambo ya privatization kupitia kwa viongozi hawa wakulima wamekataa.
If you want to privatize Nzoia, you can do some benchmarking. And you can benchmark from Mumias here. And we are not going to allow anybody, whether you are the minister or anybody dreaming.
Na sisi kitamaduni usema kama bibi amekushinda hauwezi kumuua ama kumjeruhi, unamrejesha kwa wenyewe.
The leaders have urged the national government to streamline the millers management, to waive their debts, install new machines and clear farmers' debts.
Tupewe mashini mpya, walete MD substantive na wakulima walipwe, alafu Nzoia ifanye kazi, kwa sababu Nzoia ndio kiwanda pekee ambacho tuko nacho tunachokivunia kama kaunti ya Bungoma.
The government of Kenya must provide enough budgetary provisions to provide new machines for Nzoia Sugar, and before that is done, the government of Kenya will be asking it to write off all the debts.
Tutataka kubadilisha mfumo wa ushuru unaotozwa sukari inayoagizwa kutoka nje tukiangazia ushuru ambao viwanda vyetu vya humu nchini vinatozwa.
They have trashed the sugar task force bill that was introduced by the former regime under President Uhuru Kenyatta, further condemning other leaders over sugarcane problems in the country.
We are in the sugar problem that is bedeviling Nzoia. It's because of how you ran this country. There is a lot of promises you made to Nzoia which was never fulfilled.
The leader's stand was echoed by Kenya farmers and church leaders who reiterated that the Western region citizens are facing economic hardships due to the fall of sugar companies.
You know, the government moved farmers, moved the people, the locals who are moved away, to pave way for this factory to assist our people. That is the indigenous people.
And we are extremely happy that the leadership of Bungoma County has come out clear and loud enough to say no to privatization.
Kiwe mikononi mwa wananchi wenyewe ili wapate nafasi ya ujira.
Wanji Sostin, TV47, Bungoma.
The county government of Kilifi, in partnership with a non-governmental organization, has launched the first ever mental health clinic in Magarini, Kilifi County. The 1.3 million shillings facility that has state-of-the-art equipment will ease access to medical services for patients with mental illnesses.
During the launch ceremony, Alan Obinga, the board chair of Basic Needs Organization, highlighted that Kilifi County is vast, with some patients having to travel over 25 kilometers to access mental health services.
We do recognize the county is vast, and this area is very marginalized. The distance, the walking distance for mental health services is more than 25 kilometers. So with this particular project, we are bringing services much closer to the residents of this particular area.
The new facility, costing 1.3 million shillings, is part of a series of similar clinics to be launched in the area with the goal of bringing mental health services closer to the people.
This is part of a project which deals with community health, mental health issues, and it's called the Inclusive Community Health Project, where the goal is to increase access to rights and participation of mentally ill persons in community programs. Now, as part of the community services, we do recognize that facility-based services are also important, and the number of mental health facilities across the counties are limited.
Hassan Lili, a health official in Kilifi County, revealed that there are over 7,000 mental health patients in the county, and the actual number may be higher due to gaps in the county's data collection process.
Data ya haiko sawa, hatujapata data ya hakuna reporting tools ambazo zimetupatia accurate reading, lakini wale wenye tuko nao sasa ni 7,000. Tukizindua kliniki kama hizi katika sehemu hizi za primary health care, tutakuwa nazo katika, tunazindua wengine pia baada ya hii sehemu ya Ganze, na tukizindua sehemu hizi tutakuwa tunaleta madaktari ambao pia watakuwa na ujuzi hapa ambao watakuwa wanasaidia jamii.
The new mental health clinic in Magarini is expected to bridge this gap and provide the much needed support to individuals with mental health conditions. The state-of-the-art facility is expected to enhance the quality of care for patients with mental health illnesses and contribute to the overall well-being of the community. Zainab Mohammed, TV47.
All right, and we now get to the conversation with the gentlemen that are already in studio. We still are hoping to get a hold of one that will join us shortly, but let's kickstart the conversation from this very moment. Not much of political activities as witnessed over the weekend. I mean, coming from that moment of Easter, appreciating the death and resurrection of Christ. But then again, the country has to move on, and we have lots that need to be looked into, and that's exactly what we'll be doing this morning alongside Dennis Ndubi, who is with us this morning. It's a pleasure to have you after a very long time.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for creating time,
so
as well as Professor Fred Gola, who is with us as well. Thank you so much, Prof. Good morning. I know it's a bit chilly, but you have, braced the cold to come all the way. I think it is quite a great pleasure. And this in relation to just how we are focused on making sure that we have a better country, and we cannot relent, we cannot stop speaking out to what it is that is playing out, including that conversation on just how bad we are economically, and that's being acknowledged by the leadership of the country. Perhaps at some point in time, we have castigated the former president for asking Kenyans, just what do you expect for us to do? We are not saying that the current government has asked us the same, but we have seen them complaining as well alongside the Kenyans, saying that indeed things are tough, confirming that things are bad, and instead of, probably unpacking so much so, an aspect of clarity as to how we forge forward, they speak to just how it has been a doing of the handshake. Kenyans would want to ask, just what is this handshake that we're referring to? Was there a government called the handshake? And if it was there, paid by who, what? Some of the, cases or some of the complaints that, the current government brings to the fore. Just how does it help the common mwananchi, get to that level of economic emancipation? It's on the backdrop of the economy that the Kenya Kwanza campaigned, as well as you, who is a staunch supporter, speaking of how best you intend to overturn and to the right trajectory the economy. What changed?
What changed?
Nothing has.
I think one of the things that we have to be very clear, if you look at economic indicators, first of all, I want to say good morning, viewers.
Yes.
Sorry, I jumped right into the conversation. We're just from celebrating two key traditions, the Passover, which we call it the Pesach, and the death and the resurrection of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, which happened during Passover. And so we are absolutely delighted. We are from a moment where we are reflecting our lives and the great gains and the great spiritual capital that our Lord and Savior left. And so we're here, it's raining, we are happy. The country is on the right trajectory. I think we really have to say that.
Is it?
It is.
In terms of?
It is. We're having important national discourses. When you look at what it is that we call economic growth indicators, the economy is growing. Essentially, if you look at World Bank reports and other economic reports, we're growing, at least if I'm aware, we are. But one of the things we need to do is understand that the economy does not grow in government. The economy itself is independent of the running of government. And so the thing that Kenya Kwanza came on board, the key the key campaign discourse was that if the economy then is growing, one of the reasons that we have a problem is that the growth of the economy is not all inclusive. You understand? It is not then carrying or helping everyone who is then a Kenyan. There's a section of the society that is not enjoying or experiencing this growth. So one of the pillars that Kenya Kwanza put in place is to ensure that the economy is all inclusive. And that's the reason why you have the Hustler Fund, and that's the reason why, they are critical. When you look at the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, then you realize that the specific pillars are there to ensure that this growth is all inclusive. But the current conversation on board, and the reason why people then are sort of, they are failing to draw a dichotomy between the debt crisis that we have and the obligations that the government has with the economy. And of course the issues with the plumb line when it comes to cash flow. When you have money, what do you pay first? Do you pay your debts, which is essentially the statutory government obligation? We are coming from a backdrop of huge economic and governance management, at the end of the day. And it will take time for the government to recover, but there are specifics that the government has put in place to ensure that it realizes its obligations. And I think if we look at chronologically and audit the first 10 years, and we look at our debt management portfolio, we will know that we're in a problem when it comes to debt management in this country.
You're telling Kenyans to perhaps look at 10 years, and now that will be 10 years of the Kenya Kwanza government, or what 10 years are you referring to?
There has the previous regime.
Okay, the previous.
Essentially, of course, this country is managed sequentially. You cannot be able to negate the issues that happened within Moi era and Kibaki era.
That's true.
Some of those issues we're still paying for, and we still have to go and see how to navigate through them. So it's important to understand what the government is doing. It's important to understand what kind of issues that we are going through, and it's important to understand that that what we as Kenyans then must contend with, must be able to wake up every morning and pray for and do. And at the end of the day, I believe, looking at it both from an external view and an interior view, is that this country is in the right trajectory and it is in the right hands.
Before we respond to this high-end meeting of the IMF and World Bank, I'd love for you to tell us in your own view, Professor, and again, in reacting to what it is that Dennis here says, you are positive that we could be headed to the right direction economically, and you are an economist.
Linda, I'm sure we've been in the set for TV 47 for a while.
Yeah.
And we began this conversation even last year. And I've been asking one question that has never been answered, but that's the main question. If you are talking about let's wait for more time, let's give more time, the question is, I asked, what is this stroke of genius that Kenya Kwanza has made? Which decision that you can say, this is Solomonic decision? At Operation Dogatuzu, we believe on Solomonic decision.
Yeah.
What is this Solomonic decision that was made by Kenya Kwanza, or that you can wait for?
Yeah.
For example, Linda, even if you are when we are growing up, there's a time when we had no school fees. But you can see your father making some decisions that brings hope at home, that tells you, just hold on, things gonna be all right. If your father is a drunkard and he's continued drinking and telling you there's hope for tomorrow, I'm sure you should be worried.
You have listened to what Dennis has said.
So I want
perhaps, not getting in depth into some of the prospects that are on the table. And you want to tell me that is not convincing enough?
No, because let me tell you what, Dennis has to understand that the difference between economic development and economic growth. So in terms of development, growth, we are talking about the issue, how much revenue can the government collect? That is in terms of taxes.
Yeah.
And I have numbers here. They're collecting around 9 billion per day. That translates to around 63 billion in a week.
Yeah.
This government is borrowing 25 billion every Thursday. That translates to, in a month, 252 billion shillings.
The irony of saying that this is the amount of the government that the government is borrowing, but equally the government says that, well, at this very point we will not pay the civil servants for obvious reasons.
Actually, I'm coming there.
Paying debt. So
that's what I'm coming from.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, the government collects plus borrowing.
Yes.
It means the government, in its disposal in terms of cash, it has 352 billion per month. The government budget, if you look at the government budget, because we have talked about instruments that can be justified, is between 188 billion to 200 billion per month. Now, according to me, the government should have a surplus of 152 billion shillings.
Yeah.
That's why government normally can put this either in development or in a project. The government needs to generate a surplus. They can even put them into bonds and the rest to grow. They can invest this money.
Yeah.
For example, Trade and Development Bank is an investment vehicle where ministers of different countries invest. So according to me, the government do not have a cash issue. So in growth, it is true, there's growth going on.
Yeah.
Because the growth is talking about 5.2% growth, 4-point-something% growth. So growth is happening. But economic development is different from economic growth. Where do you put this money is what determines economic development.
Yeah.
Economic development is, can Kenyans access education easier than yesterday? Can they be able to afford healthcare much easier? Because development means allowing the citizen to access goods of life, which is education, which is health, and is cost of living. Can they afford food better?
And even before it gets to that, Professor, and allow me to ask this, when we're talking about growth and development, first of all, let's pause development and talk about growth.
Yes.
There are instances where you look at the indicators and you want to understand whether the growth is normal, the growth is as should be, the growth is healthy. Because then you see you could be making strides that are quite baby, and you're asking yourself.
That's why the difference makes sense. Growth can be growing because the few rich people, because remember that 1% of Kenyans, businessmen, control 99% of Kenyans' national revenue. Meaning that 99% is left fighting for 1% of national revenue. So if the inequality is very wide, That's why you see the middle class, like the Raila Odingas of this world, they are not going to the street because they lack food. If you look at the poor people are the ones who are actually hungry. The MCAs, the senators, governors carrying sufrias on their head in the campaign trail, they don't lack food. It is the poor person, the mama mboga and the boda who is actually suffering. It is the hustlers who goes to sell clothes, second-hand shoes here and there, those with small business who are suffering. So the inequality shows that economy can grow, but growing by the rich people. You understand? And therefore, economic development means that when the government is aware about the inequality, when they get that revenue, they should put it into how can that poor person access education easily? How can that person go to hospital cheaply? How can that person afford food easily? That's why you talk about subsidies. Subsidies mean that these rich people who are doing business, they pay taxes. And that taxes is used to subsidize the poor person who is suffering. Stimulus packages. You see what I'm talking about, the surplus, I'm talking about the 152 billion shillings, that one. You can put an economic stimulus by putting youths back to work. Wazes, they can get their money. You can talk about the issue of women empowerment. You're talking about how people can give birth easily. Lowering the cost of child caring, lowering the cost of child education, lowering the cost of child rearing. You know, all that is how government works. Let me give an example, just to forget about Kenya to tell you. The Chinese government said they are going to grow the economy by 5%. Now, 5%, the Chinese economy is $20 trillion. That is difficult because our Kenyan economy is $111 billion. Can you imagine the difference? And they said what they're going to do, they're going to create 12 million urban jobs. So, means stimulus. How do you create 12 million jobs? You have to put some money in some areas. For example, we talk about sugar, just raw news. You can invest in sugar production, it will create some jobs. You can invest in a certain technology that will bring young people into work. Those are economic stimulus. So stimulus invest on what can create jobs so that people can earn their own money.
But why you are blaming the government of perhaps not painting a very, hopeful picture of, so to speak. Some of these things that you speak of, Professor, even on face value, are long-term processes.
No.
You can't just imagine that you will wake up
kazi kwa
and revive the
vijana, there are so many issues. For example, look here. How many transformers, now you see now Nairobi is almost in darkness, isn't it? How many transformers you may even just need to cut the trees or even just to weed the trees that are stopping the transformer when they fall on it. There are work that can be done tomorrow. Look at COVID.
How sustainable the kazi kwa
Linda, it is.
Then allow us to take a short break so that we see whether
it is sustainable.
And then we come back to
it. Is sustainable. What I'm trying to say here is that there are some things you can put people to work today and tomorrow. It doesn't have to wait longer. They're not long-term like building a factory I'm talking about. Sugar are lying there. The machines are not working at the moment. How much do you need to get the machine back to work? These are things that can be done
There's been the Kibaki government, there's been the Uhuru government, and two terms, and this has not rolled back to life. Just why? Allow us to take a short break and then we come back to that.
Wakati mwingine kama weekend, mimi najiachilia.
Hata ukumbuki hii story. Nikifika watu wangu watu wakinipokea na kupokeleka. Umeset the mood. Nimeset the mood. Naweza kupokeleka. Nikitumai kwamba mzima popote pale ulipo, nikikukaribisha katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi. Jina langu Elizabeth Mutuku. Katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi tunakupa nafasi kutangamana nao kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea siku nyingine. Tutapatana papa hapa umjue kiongozi mwingine.
Jiunge nasi toka hapa hadi ufuoni mwa bahari. Meli yetu itakapotua nanga kwa uhondo ribo ya riwaya hii Mwisho wa Kosa. Monica.
It's early morning in Maralal. Start your morning informed, educated, entertained, and above all, know your country. From the beautiful plains of Samburu County to the skyscrapers of Nairobi, morning cafe certainly got you covered. Indeed, a beautiful place to watch and certainly a moment of understanding and knowing your country. Indeed, to the remotest part of every county. Join me, Linda Alela, every weekday from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
The diversity of Kenya's wildlife has garnered international fame.
This is pellets that we give to the tourists, the giraffes. We ration because we don't want the giraffes to eat too much of this. We want them to have more of the natural browse.
We may not always get the opportunity to go out to see the wildlife, but you'll never miss the opportunity to see it from the comfort of your couch.
This is home to animals that have been found out there either injured, abandoned, or confiscated from people who are holding them illegally.
Only on TV 47 Wildlife, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m.
Disability is a club that anyone can join.
I live with special needs. It means I have a limitation. There are things
All right, welcome back to the broadcast, and it's about this conversation of the economy. And while one of the factors of the economy is what is perhaps reeling, or 2, 3, 4 of them, I think it's important that we have, an umbrella aspect or umbrella view as to the economic situation in the country. And once again, I will remind us that it is on the backdrop of the growth of the economy. Most of the presidential candidates, or most of the people who are seeking to form government, were campaigning on, including the Kenya Kwanza government. One of the things actually that got them a little bit, popular, giving them an edge over the competitors was hugely on how they appeared to speak to the questions and to the issues of the economy and the promising aspects that they brought to the fore, perhaps in response to what it is that Professor speaks of. He says that there are things that we could touch on, with the aspect of spontaneity and seriousness and, looking at priorities, we could tap into them, and they're quite promising in terms of reviving or in terms of getting us to the level of vibrancy economically.
Yeah.
Do you suppose he is being real with the situation that is on board? And a majority of the people who are key in the Kenya Kwanza government, including D, which I know we all watched that interview yesterday in one of the local stations, speaks to how dire the situation is and how it has forced them to take, tough measures so that at least we have, an ultimate aspect of growth economically and, sustainable for that matter. Are they too demanding when they want us to press on these buttons that would almost give us, vula food, at a blink of an eye?
First of all, I remember I was with Professor somewhere in a debate, and I told him that he cannot be consistently painting a picture that is gloomy. And I appreciate the fact that he doesn't represent government. And I think when government speaks, it speaks of hope.
Yeah.
The priority is the economy. The economy does not operate within government. The economy itself is independent of government. And the economy is driven by policies that government put in place. And I believe that we have robust policies that will drive that economy. And we have our partners here and there. And majority of the things that have been put in place, you'll see that the economic indicators, and I told Professor, I'm aware that you're thriving in this same economy that you're saying is not doing well. I mean, he runs an entire hospital, he's employed and all that. None of us here looks like we are malnutrition and all that. You understand?
Yeah.
It means that Kenya is on the right trajectory. That's number one. We must paint a picture of hope, not a picture of hopelessness. If you listen to the ND interview yesterday, he painted a picture. If there was any gloom he spoke about, was on the debt issue. We said what we have now is a debt crisis. Are we managing it? Yes. Are we going to go the Ghana way? No, at the end of the day. But are we on the red? Yes, we're on the red.
But
is this a
Professor
problem?
speaks of growth and development, and we'll all agree that none of
Look,
us
let's not get on the semantics.
Yeah?
You know, I want to be as basic as possible. This is not a technical conversation of experts. We are talking to Kenyans. The fact is that, and I said, is that the economy is growing, but it's not inclusive. So what has the government done? The government put an emergency fund, which is called the Hustler Fund, that today has lent out 25 billion shillings.
And he asked,
you know, at the end of the day,
how tangible
you understand?
as a result
Look,
of Hustler.
you're not perhaps the candidate for Hustler Fund, but people are borrowing every day to do business. Hustler Fund ensures that no Kenya should sleep hungry, or no Kenya should say, I don't have money for business. You understand? That is there. There is affordable credit that is there consistently,
and
24 hours of the day.
It would be
you
helpful
understand?
for us to have credits for purposes of setting up businesses. But you speak of a scenario where Kenyans will not sleep hungry. Well, in the sense that, and I mean, this realistically has been seen, that out of the Hustler Fund, there's someone who's going there not to get money for business, but money to feed their child for that very day. Is that what we really want? A scenario where we will be borrowing so that we sustain our day-to-day activities? Is that what
Linda, the most important thing is that there's affordable credit for you today, including you.
Yes.
If you're stuck out here, there's somewhere where you can borrow and pay tomorrow.
Is that not what the likes of Fuliza were doing?
No, it's not Fuliza. Fuliza, the interest rates were punitive. It was over 1,000%. At the end of the day, Hustler Fund, you're almost getting free money. For nothing. Why don't you make use of it? So a lot of Kenyans are making use of it. There's 25 billion, that is 25 billion that was not there. This was credit that was not accessible to the bottom of the base. Isn't that something? Yes, it is something. Number two, there's the digital superhighway that is going to be funded by the World Bank. Number three, there's the UHC. And UHC, you were saying about access to healthcare. You understand? Then we have the aspect of housing. So far,
in the pipeline.
No, things that have already been done. If you listen to D yesterday, he said one of the greatest projects that we have is the UHC. The concept of housing. So far, the president has launched housing projects that have accessed jobs to thousands of Kenyans. That's functional. We are talking about the cost of living. He spoke about subsidies. The subsidy program is there, but it is not funding consumption, it's funding production. Today, farmers are accessing fertilizer at almost zero rates. Quality fertilizer. You understand?
Some of them
and the priority, no, I don't know who has said, but listen, I'm a farmer. What do you mean? And then we have rain. So look at August, we're going to have a bumper harvest. When you're dealing about the cost of living, what do you deal? We have priorities, the government has prioritized food. You're talking about, he talked about a budget. Budget, you focus on revenue collection. KRA has moved from 14% to 17%, it's going to 20%. When we get to 20%, we're going to be able to finance or refinance anything that we're talking about. Forex exchange was the biggest deal. Forex exchange, at the end of the day, was what was taking up our inflation. You understand? So today, what has the government done? The government has made sure that it has stabilized the shilling. The government has made sure.
At the expense of what? Because then again, when we have reports of, yes, and when we have reports of, civil servants not getting their pay, when we have reports of people still dying because of the high cost of living, or, lack to access, they do not have proper access to foods and all that. That also is a concern. And when you're looking at the economy, he is an economist, he will tell you the importance of looking at the indicators, the importance of addressing, again, the short-term matters before you look at the longer perspective of it.
And that's the reason why Linda have said the cost of living, the government is actively working on it. Why? Subsidized production. There's going to be a bumper harvest in this country. I've gone around all the farming areas, especially prioritization on fertilizer was around the areas that grow maize. I can tell you farmers are busy farming. The rains are here, and I'm glad that the rains are intermittent. This is not rain that is going to spoil the harvest. When you talk about civil servants not being paid, priority is economy, not government. You understand?
Yes.
Civil servants will be paid. The last government, what it was doing was borrowing to pay salaries at the end of the day. We have debt is the first charge to the consolidated fund. You understand? Then followed by pensions and many other things. So when government collects, the first thing it does is to make sure that we pay our debts. Why do we need to pay our debts? So that our risk does not go up. There's something called the country risk. And the country risk, at the end of the day, there are many other dynamics. But if we default, and there's, next year we have one of the biggest bonds, African bonds ever. We have to make sure that we pay that. Debt to GDP is at 60%. You understand? Ndi alluded to the fact that it took 3 years to stabilize the Kibaki. You understand? The priority of this government is to make sure that you deal with the cost of living.
But the economic indicators were promising. Do you suppose the other side is hitting so hard and perhaps, you know, not painting a clear picture to the people of Kenya? Because as it is, they will tell you that it was almost instant, that during the Kibaki times, while it took 3 years to stabilize the economy, you know, you could see indicators of, well, this is promising, we're headed to the right direction, and we're hopeful. And Kenyans could eagerly wait for these moments. Why is it?
And that's what I was telling you,
today?
Linda.
Yeah.
Already, you can say some factors that are stable. Unga is going down. Government is ensuring that they work with farmers. Agriculture as a core pillar of establishing the food economy and bringing the cost of living down. That is already ongoing. You can't negate the fact that government has already registered.
So it would be misplaced to argue that the government is broke or the country is?
No, listen. The conversation about, you know, we're a sovereign nation.
Yeah.
The conversation about going broke, I don't believe it's a useful conversation. The fact is that government inherited a dilapidated treasury. And inheriting that dilapidated treasury, they have put measures in place to stabilize the same treasury. The government inherited a shilling that was on fire, inflation that was off the roof, unemployment numbers that were out of crazy, a country that was neither food sovereign or food secure, and now the government is working with farmers to ensure that we are food sovereign and food secure. Government in the last 7 months has put critical measures to ensure that there are specific stabilizations that have happened. So this story, look, and we have to separate. We have to separate the government aspect on their paying debts and their obligations and the salaries obligation to the fragility and the strengthening of the economy, which is what we are seeing now. Today, even as somebody who is running a family, I can attest to the fact that there's a bit of relief that has come. But I'm looking to navigating towards August, whereby I won't have to struggle with the cost of food, putting food on the table. You understand? UHC is coming at the end of the day. No, I mean, I keep on telling you, he can laugh sarcastically, but you can look at Prof. Prof is a man of means. You understand? So I'm talking about somebody basically who works with farmers and somebody basically, even as a clergy, who works with the lowest of our people. The truth is that government is putting measures in place to ensure that the cost of living is going up. There are 5 specific pillars that if you go to the Kenya Kwanza policies and all that, and their manifesto, you'll see specifically that they're actually actualizing them. And the first one is the cost of living. The second one is collection. And I'm telling you, it's gone from 14% to 70%, and they're driving to 20%. Foreign exchange, the shilling has been stabilized. Jobs, the president is busy creating these jobs. And an inclusive growth, which is the bottom-up economic model that the Hustler Fund currently is working towards stabilizing.
Let me take it to Professor, who is laughing sarcastically as you allude to some of these matters that are here. And that, yes, of course, increasing the level of tax, then Kenyans would almost expect that, you know, we also get a development out of this, you know, on an instant basis, and you have spoken to that. This could be such, you know, an unnecessary question, but I'll ask it all the same. At what point then does the government, you know, inherit, you know, the other, that is before and after the swearing in? And also, at what point do they know the type of the economy they inherit? Because again, Ndi alluded to the fact that they had conversations as to the economy even before, you know, they were sworn in. At that point of campaign, these people were part and parcel of the government, and therefore they knew very well what it is that they are bound to inherit. Why is it that today then it sounds like it is out of this world for them, that it's a surprise, that you know, they now have to remind Kenyans that it was about them, allow us to work on this and that?
Linda, first of all, you have to understand Kenya Kwanza government. Kenya Kwanza government came at a platform of propaganda, and a government that comes with a platform of propaganda, you can only expect them to sustain it through propaganda. But if you listen to what my brother Dennis is saying, and you call anyone on the street and listen to sound bites on the street, will you hear this conversation that it's easier to run a family?
Perhaps not.
Linda, you pay electricity. I'm paying electricity. Mm-hmm. It's more expensive than it was, and it's getting more expensive. Any woman who imports second-hand clothes to resell them, to access that dollar and buy it, it's becoming harder to do business. As border, the fuel is giving them headache. They are trying to see how they can squeeze more money from their customers so that they can sustain it. Everybody is working on just how to sustain. Whether you are rich or poor, everybody feels it. Yeah. I've heard where someone has told people that no, lights have to go off at some time at home. And these are clear people. I've gone to supermarkets, if I tell you. I've seen the middle class who drive Mercedes-Benz striking off a type of roadway they used to take, and they take a cheaper one. I've gone to a supermarket. I was actually in a supermarket over this Easter, and I saw two couples saying, you know, if we get that Royco, it is less than what we have been buying. Before, they have never debated which Royco to buy. Yeah. Kenyans have never debated whether to buy Dettol or buy Geisha. There are middle class who just pick Geisha. They shop when they are on phone. Now they shop when they are discussing on, should we take this, should we take that? So the picture that my brother is portraying here is completely not true. Yeah. Now let me go to your direct question. You know what's happening, my dear Linda? Even if we forget about these questions about at what point, it's leadership. It's leadership is about when you are a leader, you are not supposed to be telling people how difficult it is to be there. Linda, if you enter a plane, and you enter a plane, when the pilot takes off, he starts telling you that the clouds are crazy. The wind speed is, I don't know what we are doing. Will you even sit there and take coffee in that plane? No. You want a pilot who will fly the plane. He will tell you there will be, actually the pilot will say there will be a bit of some kind of turbulence, but don't be worried. You know, that assurance. You know, this is what we have not got it from Kenya.
You think that is not what they're telling us?
That is no, they are not telling us that there's. They're not telling us that there's turbulence. They're telling us I inherited a bad plane. But they have. Plane did not have fuel. Can you imagine?
The president has constantly reminded Kenyans that you know, they are at this. They are
no.
Sure.
As a leader, the time when the plane is in so much trouble, we have talked about planes which landed in Houston. Remember the story about the plane who landed in Houston, when it was completely having a technical challenge. The pilot, there were people who were actually lame there, people who were disabled, some people were sick, they had heart disease, they were going for hospital. The pilot didn't tell them what was the issue. The pilot kept the plane. Just, Dennis, I allowed you to talk.
It's a debate, so allow me to.
No, allowed you to finish.
Let him give us the analogy and then you...
I mean, because we are taking aviation lessons and we're here
No, I'm trying to say, no, Dennis, please just be respectful.
It's an analogy.
I'm trying to say that there's a time when things are tough that you have to, even as a family member, even if you talk about aviation, you can't tell your kids that, I don't know how you're going to go to school.
But that is not how the government has to.
No, they're painting the picture that the picture is very bad and grim. Yeah. Leadership.
And you want them to lie to us?
No. What I want to drive here, just give me time.
Yeah. Make leadership, it brief, so
leadership, we know that it's not easy. So when the president and deputy president of the government was taking over this government, they're supposed to know it was not easy. Kenyans were already very spoiled with the subsidies, isn't it? Life was already crazy. The economy was at the center of this campaign. Yeah. And in fact, one way you can say government, the other way you can also tell the citizens. If the economy was at the center of this campaign, did you elect an MP who knows economics? Or you elected lawyers and those who have money to go to parliament? Because this discussion actually can be happening in parliament. Do you think the current crop of senators, MPs, those in elective houses, the MCAs, can engage these leaders in an economic discussion? That's an important thing we have to look at here.
Linda.
Okay.
Then last but not least, just allow me.
Let's be fair. Yeah.
Let us just educate Kenyans a little, because then he says something which is...
please allow us to continue.
He said, no, this is important, Linda, that economy is independent of government.
Yeah.
That is impossible. Normal. Because if you can't tell me that whatever the government can do anything and the economy will be fine. Even in strategy, you talk about political, economic pastel analysis, that the political environment, the economic environment, the technological environment determines even how you want to run your business, even if you're a mama mboga. So I'm sure that whatever happens, whatever the president says, the economy breathes it. If the president says we are going to affordable housing, people will start doing construction, people will start. So whatever the government says at any one given time, people respond to it in how they go to do business tomorrow.
Wakati mwingine kama weekend, mimi najiachilia.
Hata ukumbuki hii story. Nikifika watu wangu wakinipokea na kupokeleka. Umeset the mood. Nimeset the mood. Naweza kupokeleka. Nikitumai kwamba mzima popote pale ulipo, nikikukaribisha katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi. Jina langu Elizabeth Mutuku. Katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi tunakupa nafasi kutangamana nao kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea siku nyingine. Tutapatana papa hapa umjue kiongozi mwingine.
Jiunge nasi toka hapa hadi ufuoni mwa bahari. Meli yetu itakapotua nanga kwa uhondo ribo ya riwaya hii mwisho wa kosa. Monica.
It's early morning in Maralal. Start your morning informed, educated, entertained, and above all, know your country. From the beautiful plains of Samburu County to the skyscrapers of Nairobi, Morning Cafe certainly got you covered. Indeed, a beautiful place to watch and certainly a moment of understanding and knowing your country. Indeed, to the remotest parts of every county. Join me, Linda Alela, every weekday from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
The diversity of Kenya's wildlife has garnered international fame.
This is pellets that we give to the tourists, the giraffes. We ration because we don't want the giraffes to eat too much of this. We want them to have more of the natural browse.
We may not always get the opportunity to go out to see the wildlife, but you'll never miss the opportunity to see it from the comfort of your couch.
This is home to animals that have been found out there either injured, abandoned, or confiscated from people who are holding them illegally.
Only on TV47 Wildlife, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m.
Disability is a club that anyone can join.
I live with special needs. It means I have a limitation. There are things I can't be able to do personally myself.
And in our journey to talk about disability, we tell the stories of those with disabilities and even sit with specialists to understand what it means for those affected directly and indirectly.
Everybody's life, mine has also been faced with ups and downs.
If it becomes a self-stigmatized thing where you feel like you are judging yourself too harsh, you blame yourself, and you perceive that it happened because you failed.
Join me, Zainab Mohammed, on Beyond the Limit every Saturday at 7:30 p.m.
An entrepreneur is defined as someone who has their...
back, gentlemen. For that bit of a hitch, the conversation did not stop at any point. I don't even know how then we bring Dennis back because then somewhere along the line we lost ourselves. But we're glad that in the process, Professor Macharia Munene joins us for this very conversation. Professor, thank you so much. The two gentlemen are giving me a hard time here. I do not know whom to believe.
No, I wanted to react to some of the things that Professor has said.
Yeah.
And of course I said it's grave disinformation and misinformation. Professor is not going to tell you some critical facts of the fact that this government inherited a dilapidated country and a dilapidated economy. Professor is not going to tell you that the previous government handed over 600 billion in pending bills which have to be paid. He will not tell you that the government left 900 billion in unfinanced projects.
And this is in the public.
He's not going to tell you that the last government spent 100 billion outside the budget for the current financial year at the end of the day. He's also not going to tell you that debt is the first charge in the consolidated fund. So we have to clean up the mess that the autocracy left.
And
that's
cleaning up,
you understand? And also
advantaging others?
No, there is no one who's look,
as it stands.
Delay in payment is not refusal to pay. The civil servants will get their salaries this week at the end of the day. But has government fulfilled its first charge?
In the rawest,
correct.
In the rawest form.
Correct.
Organically, you speak of delaying salaries and you know, literally that means crippling people.
Look, let me tell you what the last government did. We have expensive debts that we have to pay banks here at the end of the day. You understand? And so when you talk about government's obligation, you have to tell Kenyans the truth. Are you going to pay CBA or are you going to pay, the government cannot default. Once we default, we take our risk high. We cannot go the same way
not paying salaries
at the end of the day. It is not, listen,
Okay.
you know, Professor is and unfortunately he's becoming a propagandist fast.
No.
Look, there's a difference between delayed and not paying. This week, civil servants will get their salaries.
Okay.
There is just an obligation, and the first obligation, there's just policies that the government must detail itself to.
And you say this?
Yes.
All right.
At the end of the day.
Let's look at Professor.
You understand? And that is what the government has said. I'm just repeating in terms of verbatim.
Yes.
But we cannot say that civil servants will not be paid. Civil servants will be paid. But the government has fulfilled its obligation. But let us also appreciate that this government has done some serious cleanups that were done by the people that Professor is defending.
Professor, and the desperate moments will call for desperate measures. Perhaps we'd want to look at what is being done by government right now, as you know those desperate measures. But looking at these talks of propaganda and what it is that they speak about, that Uhuru carried money in bags home, that the handshake government borrowed money, that we found only 92 million, and we understand the collection on a daily basis for us. I mean, just a way of covering up for not performing, or realistically concerns that need to be looked into?
Well, both sides are in the business of selling themselves and trying to look good.
And by both sides, you mean Kenya Kwanza and?
Yeah, these are politicians.
Okay.
And and so they do their best to look good and make the other side look bad.
Yeah.
That's bad. Now, part of the discussion I found going on is essentially the role of government. Government is there to manage the affairs of the state in a particular place. Okay? The security, the economy, it has a big input in the economy, whatever one. Now, whether that comes through policy formulation, or giving some leeway for people to make money, and not it's one of those debates that you have. But the government, of necessity, has influence in the running of the country's economy, because that's the running of the welfare in defense and everything. So if the economy is kaput, everything else goes kaput. So that's a reality. Now, this particular government did inherit some trouble. Yes.
Yeah.
There were a lot of debts that were incurred. Rightly or wrongly is not the issue, but there were a lot of debts. And so we kept on hearing, we are floating some bonds. We are doing this, we are doing this. That happened. Now, the new government, which the argument sometimes is they were part of the old government, because you have the deputy president is part of that, and did inherit some of those problems. Has it managed itself very well? It came with promises, the optics, that this and this and this will be done, which implied they misled the public, or they did not know what they were talking about. Because those are the two things. If they knew what they were talking about, then there are some things they would not have said. If they knew and they still said them, then there's a problem. And that's where the skepticism is coming in. You said it. The implication is that you did not know what you're talking about. Because yes, there were challenges. And you said this, so you did not know what you're talking about. In that case, the question is, can we trust you to continue? Other than that, the imagery itself, what we have seen, is yes, statement that these things were happening and there were challenges. And then you are told there is no money, which is okay. And then the impression that comes up is, you said there's no money. Where did you get the money to take up over 300 people to Cairo? You know, were they needed? And so whether the argument, the justification for that has not been made.
And we had Dee speak to some of this, and he says that sometimes you would even be surprised by the number of people that will join in such sessions, because some of them will tell you they've been paid for by the donors.
Yeah. So, anyway, but the image, what I'm talking about is the imagery.
Yes.
Whether
it is
somebody took his pocket money and sponsored somebody, the impression was that the government has taken.
Yes. So it becomes hard for people to trust.
Yes, to trust. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And the people who went to Cairo were the wives and spouses and children or so and so.
Very same, yeah.
You know, so the impression itself, the justification for it was not made for people to understand. There have been some expenditures that raise questions in the midst of lack of money. I think one of the interesting one was the 50 assistant ministers. So, wait a minute, what's going on?
From 20-something.
Yeah, there is no money.
Yeah.
And then you overload the government with whether the money, what was being said that they're going to be paid was the correct. I don't know how those figures. But the calculation in some media was that they're going to be getting $1 million shillings a month.
And Dee himself says, that's very little money, 0 point something.
Yeah, but to the public out there, that's not little money.
Yeah.
People don't have 50,000. And you are lumping a lot of people together to give them $1 million shillings a month. And the problem was not even of course, the number was the issue, but the quality of those people
again
raise questions. Surely, can't you find better people than this? Those were the things. So what I'm saying is the imagery is a challenge. And this government has a problem, the PR problem. They may be trying very hard. I think they are trying.
Yes.
But when you go around hearing that there is an office called the Office of the Spouse of so-and-so, just created out of nothing. Or there is, whether it exists or not, the Office of the First Daughter or the First Son or whatever. These are images that stick in people's mind.
And they say propaganda is in a way advanced level of PR.
It is PR.
When we say that it's a government of propaganda, and at the same time we say that they have failed on the PR perspective, just what are we saying? And maybe you would come in relation to that. What are we saying? No. Is it that you have failed to paint a clear picture to the people of Kenya, or you are shooting yourselves in the foot based on how you've not been able to manage the communication perspective, such that then blames are...
Linda, there are some dynamics at play.
Yeah.
Number one, there's an overall posture by the media in the country to support Azimio and paint the government black.
Is it?
And number two, sincerely speaking, is that the government could do better in speaking in terms of what it is doing that Kenyans are not aware, in a consolidated way, whereby not one ministry is doing left, the other one is doing right, and there's no consolidated approach in terms of how the communication is done. That is a reality that government must fix, and it needs to fix fast. In an environment where media is not pro-you, then you really have to do a lot. And we've come all the way from the campaign season, where you saw majority of the media then, and I think I have to congratulate TV47.
Thank you.
And I'm very specific. I pray that journalism that emanates from chapter 4, the Bill of Rights, that it is being displayed in this channel. And over the campaign period, where you could breathe as Kenya Kwanza was here. The rest of the guys are pretty pro-Azimio without any apology whatsoever. Even their own regulator has called them out, but they failed to do. They have spread propaganda left, right, center, and then so with that realization,
I will play the devil's advocate and say they have reported the matters that
there's been a lot of lies and disinformation that they have churned out there. You understand? And unfortunately, government has not done a spectacular job in terms of educating Kenyans otherwise. You sort of assume, you know, when somebody attacks your reputation, you need to clear your name. You understand? But you sort of assume that Kenyans understand, and Kenyans are consumers that are not selective. It's one thing I've realized. You could hear a lie being told in Muthurwa about you, and the Muthurwa guys are believed. And then you're also wondering, is that me or it's another person? You understand? Then maybe over 6 months, you may start believing that it is probably something that you've never checked out or whatever it is that there is. But the government could do a better job communicating what it is doing.
The leadership itself, the likes of the deputy president, are they making the situation worse, or are they just being genuine, which should not be castigated?
The deputy president is honestly a truthful man. We are in a society that sometimes truth is taboo, and sincerely honest. And are we able to have honest discussions that are very uncomfortable in this nation? For example, we, in the last 41 years, we have never been able to discuss bad manners in politics and impunity, that you can be defeated on the polls and you cause chaos, and somehow the country has never navigated out of that for the last 41 years. The country has never gone beyond the impunity that losers cause trouble in the streets, and they must be included. So there has to be a new way that we have to find this thing out, because for what necessity is the rule of law? Why do we have a constitution that prescribes its fidelity to the rule of law, but politicians don't practice that? And I wanted to say something. We are in a market economy, not a command economy. We must be very careful when we say government must command the economy. Then we will lose our market democracy. Market democracy is so critical when government starts prescribing what goods and services we sell and how we sell them. Yes, government must regulate competition, but we are an economy that we must be in a market that is democratic. Government can specify policy. Government can control competition, but government cannot control the markets. When we get to the place that government is controlling the markets, then we get into fascism. And fascism is where policy cannot allow you to sell your milk to somebody else. And unfortunately, that is what was happening in the milk and coffee industries. And so the government is trying to get farmers out of that stranglehold. If government has to specify how much fertilizer will be, then we're in trouble. But government must regulate the cost of that fertilizer so that at least production cannot be off the roof. There are specific dynamics and realities that this government will face for the first time in the last 41 years. For the first time, they have to know how to advance the rule of law. For the first time in the last 41 years, the president must understand how to use his sword. For the first time in the last 41 years, the president must be a terror to impunity. For the first time in the last 41 years, we need to see high-level arrests. For the first time in 41 years, we must navigate out of presidential immunity where you sin because the president is your buddy. And I like the fact that the president said, look, you're a cabinet secretary, please go to parliament. Let parliament audit you. And if they find that you have several mistakes, you haven't performed, please carry your cross.
Do you see a government that is capable of doing that? And I know you will remind us of the numerous cases that have been withdrawn. You will remind us of these very same cabinet secretaries that have ascended to that level, you know, with questionable integrity, if you'd want to call it that way. You will remind us of the fact that, you know, Even the chief government advisor onto the question of the economy acknowledges that this is a government that is overspending and speaks and alludes to some of these matters. So do you foresee a scenario where we're going to see this massive, angle of making sure that the rule of law then is addressed, that the government can, or the president can actually speak using this word for purposes of making sure that we have some level of sanity, contrary to what we have witnessed in the previous regimes?
Linda, I think the question we can ask here that, do you have any evidence that the current government has done anything which is unconstitutional? And I can tell you examples are there. How can you lead with impunity and you want other people to follow the law? Appointment of 50 CSS, is it in contravention of the law or not? Is it in contempt with the court? Not just he broke the law, but somebody went to court again, and the court pronounced itself, and they have not obeyed. So if you are sitting in London, let's forget about these Kenyan things, because let's forget about, you are sitting in London, you're sitting in New York, you're sitting in Philadelphia, and you want to come to this country to invest. And you're looking at the president, you look at his deputy, you look at all these team of Kenya Kwanza, CSS and PSS and name it. And you say, when I come to Kenya, what kind of conversation am I going to have? When I want to invest, where will it start? It will start with their stomach or investing in the economy. You are meeting a civil servant who has not received a salary. What is their first conversation? Linda, let's not lie to ourselves here. That this government is incapable of doing everything Dennis has said, that to lead us towards keeping the law, because that's what has been done every now and then. Look at even as senior as this guy. What is his name? Look at as senior as the head of the police, Inspector General, declaring that a demonstration is illegal while they have it is in the Bill of Rights. So if it is about keeping the law, we have to start from the top. We have to lead from the top, and we have to lead from the top. That will happen. And maybe if you like to hear this again, Kenya Kwanza. Me, I don't want to listen to all these things. So no, we are doing this and this. We shall know that they are making the right policy if cost of living goes down, because in strategy or even economy, we talk about leading variables and lagging variables. Lagging variables are the things you are doing. The leading variables are what is felt on the mama mboga, on the normal Kenya. Let us not discuss this in the boardroom. Maybe Dennis is a boardroom guy, but let's discuss this on the street. On the street, are you seeing that the leading variables is that fuel is cheaper, unga has gone down, education is more accessible? Can we see that happen? And then, Linda, let's be honest here. These things of blaming handshake government, it is a misnomer. We have, the Kenya Kwanza is not the first government to inherit a handshake government. Remember, Moi had an MOU with Raila, and they worked together. Raila came into government. And then after that, Kibaki inherited that government. And then Uhuru Kenyatta inherited a Nusumkate government between Raila and Kibaki. So this is not something new to become a big issue. Now, the difference between Kibaki and Uhuru and Ruto is that Ruto has made inheriting a handshake government become a big issue and the reason for his non-performance. And Kibaki never spent time mentioning what happened between Moi and Raila. Neither did Uhuru spend too much time on what happened between Raila and Kibaki. He went down to work and to bring what is called positive vibes in the economy.
And perhaps that's the reason why these are different regimes and different presidents.
Yes. So you see, he had an option to focus on delivering to people. For me, whatever then it says, fertilizer, rainfall, what we want to see is people breathing much better? Are you going to bed, Linda, with hopes that tomorrow is going to be a good day? Not hope for religion, but hope economically, that somebody has made a good decision that makes you feel much better.
I'd love to hear whether Professor then would go to bed with such confidence, but even still you speak of how important packaging and messaging is. But there are instances where then it becomes difficult to, defend the things that are undefendable. For instance, we'd expect that Lee then speaks on behalf of the government by all means. But he comes to the fore to speak of just how government is extremely wasteful. He goes ahead to say, governments, yes, he actually spoke about governments. And I mean, we would want to look at it uniquely to our situation, perhaps just to allude to the fact that even when you see this happening in the country, just know it cuts across, but reality is that it is also happening in the country. He says there's not a single day that I am not exasperated by not just how wasteful it is, but by how deliberate it is and how unbothered people are. He could be talking about governments, but as well alluding to what it is that is happening in the country. You want to package your messaging, you want to speak well of the government, but then some of these things are just things that you can't defend.
Well, I think give credit to David India for admitting there is a deliberate wastage. I think that's what I got from what you read there. Deliberate wastage in the government. And since that cannot be hidden, then it makes the government look very bad. There is deliberate wastage coming from the government advisor in that sense. But I would like to shift gears a little bit. We keep on repeating the same thing. And I think Dennis alluded to it. The problem we have in Kenya is not the constitution. It's not the laws. It's not even the economy. It's attitude. People who make a constitution on things and then they don't believe in them. So we have the repeated play the game, win or lose, and then reject the game if you don't win. It's an attitude thing. And it needs to be tackled one way or the other. All these commissions and things we are busy cooking up. Always find out the root cause. There's no other root cause. Because whatever you do, the committee, the 14 they are trying to create, it's a committee of 14. And one of the weaknesses of that committee of 14, if it comes into being, they yet have to have a chair, the referee. Who's going to be the referee? Because either Wetangula or the Kilifi former governor, Kingi, the Senate. Somebody has to referee these two people, these two groups, as they talk or insult each other in the name of finding a way out. Maybe they will come up with something. I know there are some people who are credible Kenyans who can be tasked with that, because there has to be a referee. Whether you have a religious person like Moheria, or you have a former CJ like Maraga or Mutunga, or somebody else of repute, that both sides have to agree to. That this person, yes, we may not, he may lean on that side, but this person is fair. That's the issue. They need to have to agree on that before they can go very far. But whatever they come up with, these people, and then they take it to Parliament to ratify, because that's what will happen. Whatever they agree, they will take to Parliament for ratification. Otherwise, it does not become law. So that is still irrelevant until we change what the attitude thing. That the outcome, whether we like the outcome or not, stands. That we have not been able to deal with. And so you go back to the past elections, it's the same thing. In 1997, well, that was, Moi was accepted. What happened there, the comparison was a different matter. In 2002, there was no issue before the election. It's only after the election when Kibaki and Raila started quarreling. Who has a bigger say in the government? That's how it was. And then the 2007 election, the outcome, Kibaki won officially, and people will say he really won. But it was not accepted. So you have all this chaos. Some of it manufactured from outside the country. because we know them, those who are being involved for their own reasons. And we ended up with a nusu mkate. Okay, but what is the essence there? The official results were not accepted. Then you come in to the recent one. It's the same thing. So until we develop that culture of the top players accepting the results, we are going to be creating commissions, amending laws, changing this, looking for root causes which are not there.
And I mean, that's what someone asks. They say for 41 years, Kenya has not spoken about stealing elections. Why? So is it about these individuals accepting, or it is about us sanitizing the election? Do we go the Tanzanian way, where we say, well, once it is declared, that's it. No more going to the courts until now the next other years that we come to go to an election?
No, the 2010 Constitution tried, and you know it has a lot of weaknesses.
Yes.
But it tried to say, if you are not satisfied, go to where?
The Supreme Court. And once it's declared, that's it.
Yeah, and once the court declared, that's it. That's the way it should be. And those who are drafting, because they were very crafty and sneaky, they give a very short time period for appeal.
For appeal and for...
Because previously there was no room for appeal. In 1992, the first election after the return of the multi-party, in which Moi won. Matiba came second, Kibaki third, and Jaramogi was fourth. Moi was sworn in immediately.
Yeah.
The Kevoit, not Kevoit, who was the guy running the election at the time. He announced, Zakaria Chesoni. The winner is Daniel Arap Moi, and within an hour there was a swearing in. People just opened, what's going on here? So the argument is the reason it was done is to stop people from going where?
To court.
To court. Okay? So you have that the 2010 Constitution was there trying to, even in 1997, there was a rumor that Kibaki might go to court. And so there was cut out this. You know, so the Constitution tried to amend that anomaly by saying you have 2 weeks.
Allow us to go to court.
Yeah, allowed to go. No, you cannot swear anybody in before the court period is exhausted. That was a positive development. And it was supposed to cure some of these concerns that somebody loses and then it complains, continues complaining. It did not cure that.
It has worsened the situation.
It did not. So we have a situation.
Just pick up from because Professor. I haven't. Just to pick up from Professor said, and I haven't said anything. Listen, and I alluded to the fact that the last 41 years, we have seen political impunity where nothing has been able to cure this.
And it will be different this time.
And Professor said it. And there has been one constant player or denominator, Raila Amolo Odinga.
Okay.
His entry into Moi government, he entered as a possible successor of Moi. And Moi gave him latitude, but Moi nominated Uhuru. When Moi nominated Uhuru, Odinga caused in a coup in Kano. He exited, shopped for the next most popular presidential candidate, and that was Mwai Kibaki. He knew that Mwai Kibaki was going to win. He went to Mwai Kibaki and said, I will run with you for as long as when you get in, you amend the constitution and I become an all-powerful prime minister. But
why
you understand?
I mean,
allow me to
he's
finish.
Quite powerful politically.
No. Raila is, me and him, we are citizens.
Then why?
We don't have any government positions.
Yeah.
So we have then to practice our politics through Article 1 of the Constitution. Yeah. We have elected members. Raila is not an MP, is not a president, is not anyone elected. So we have to confine ourselves to constitutionalism. When Kibaki got in and he realized that Raila wanted an all-powerful seat more than the president, he gave a caricature of an amendment that brought in a weak PM and a strong president. Raila refused at the end of the day. And that mismanagement of politics and a culture of impunity is what led to the death of thousands of Kenyans at the end of the day, and the displacement of a few in the chaos of 2007. Again, there was no punishment. And that led to 2013 and 2017. And even with the entry of Constitution 2010, that brought in a nexus of resolving political disputes, Raila still does not respect the Supreme Court. He doesn't care what the Supreme Court says. His word is final. I don't recognize the government of the day, yet the referee ruled that you lost. The Supreme Court unanimously ruled that you lost. There has been a proper practice that even the international community has recognized. So what is the solution? The solution is simple. The power lies with institutions, and the power lies with the president. The president must end this impunity that has plagued the country for 41 years. Let me tell you why it's so dangerous. The reason why, according to IMF records, that Kenya has such a serious country risk, which affects political risk, is because after every 5 years, the country is burning. After every 5 years, the country is burning, with one common denominator, Raila Odinga. I pose it to you, that if Raila Odinga is no longer in Kenyan politics, Kenya will stabilize.
Is it?
We will not see the consistent 5 years of uprising, because these have been the interests of one man. He doesn't believe that Kenyans have rejected him as a president. So that one man has plagued the nation for years, believing that he must be the president, and that all means constitutional or unconstitutional.
And he's not been
that
president.
must stop with the Ruto reign. If Ruto doesn't stop it, then we are back to the chaos.
All right.
Linda,
God forbid.
I don't want to go to the emotional part of it.
No, that is constitutional. It's not emotional. I've discussed facts. But I'm touching his clan.
But you're referring to an individual, and we're asking ourselves, what is so special about this individual?
I don't want to go to the emotional part of it. What I'm trying to say, let me pick from Prof. When we talk about the issue of trying to fix this. First of all, what we are going through, Linda, is not ideal. Whether you are from Kenya Kwanza or from Azimio, so long as you are a Kenyan, someone who is a lover of Kenya, we don't want to go this. We want where elections are done. After elections are done, we focus on what is affecting the common mwananchi.
Yeah.
And let's just buy a leaf from China. China did the election to the Xi Jinping in less than an hour. After an hour, he pronounced economic policy. And they are running. No one is on the street.
Yeah.
Would you not like to be like that? I'm not saying we don't want an election like China, because China is the opposite of democracy. But nevertheless, would we not want that after Kenyans did the election on August 9th, then we should forget about elections and focus on national building, and people have to go to work? Any Kenyan, no matter which organization you come from, that's what we want. But the perennial issues of going back to the street, it is not good manners. And Prof, you cannot legislate good manners. Even if Raila Odinga was the president today, and someone is going to the street to protest the election, he won't be happy. So why don't we bring decorum in the country? Let's forget about now. It is no longer between Raila and Ruto. Let's forget about what is Kenya, what is ideal for Kenya. Linda, if you win election today, instead of waking up to look at where are you going to launch affordable housing, where are you going to build agriculture, where are you going to talk about education, members of parliament were elected to legislate how the economy can go forward. Now we are having them being select committee to discuss about things to do with the election. I'm asking Kenyans, did you elect members of parliament to be in committees to legislate mandamano? Nobody wants this, whether you are in any part of the world. Unless you hate Kenya, nobody wants it. It's not attractive. What I'm trying to say here is that in the US, we've had similar cases where somebody won an election and was not happy, and there is some good manners by saying, you don't have always even to get what you deserve. Some of us have been going through some injustice, and you let it go just because other things also have to continue. So we can't legislate good manners. My concern is this. Why are some people still following Raila Odinga to the street?
Because there are concerns that really...
Yeah, there are some concerns that need to be done. And in this case, this 2023, I can tell you Kenya Kwanza brought it to themselves because they talk about the economic deliverables that were supposed to give. If they gave them, like cost of living, they brought it down. And then the issue of, Professor talk about the issue about deliberate mismanage of the economy, excesses. Like CSS, people don't want them. Ask any Kenyan, ask them, what's the priority of Kenya Kwanza? Will they agree that we should be able to having 50 CSS on the ground? All this employment we put. Now, David Ndii is not a government spokesperson. In fact, David Ndii is an advisor to the president on economic matters. What we want to know, what is the outcome of that advice to the president rather than coming to do propaganda? Because when you come to speak on television, to talk about what we are doing, that is not advice. The advice is the president. You should have the ear of the president, policy makers in government, treasury. Let us see what treasury is doing and the government is doing, other than now today we are listening to Gachagua in terms of policy. Tomorrow is Moses Kurwa. Next day is Ichungwa. The other day is Ndii. Then this day is Japheth Koome. Which is the policy direction that Kenya is taking? For me, this is what is important, and he said it before. There's a need for more communication. And also, to tell you the truth, let us not blame the media for anything. Because I can tell you, media policy is also clear that the media needs to be given media freedom. In fact, one of the benefits they are getting in this country, even if you want Raila Odinga not to be in this country, that's not the issue, but there are some benefits he has had. And in fact, people talked about in the beginning, they want a strong opposition in Nakuru. The strong opposition they're talking about is they want Raila Odinga to lead the opposition, meaning that they don't want him to be out of the country, but they want him to lead the opposition to be stronger. So nevertheless, you like it or not, there are some good things about Raila Odinga. There are some things also you may not want to have. Ruto also has some good things about him. And there are some things you don't want him to have as well. Let us have a balanced economy. Let's all bring voices together. The media is very important because whatever happens in darkness is very, very dangerous. And then even if you want to say the media should not report some things, let me tell you what. Linda, you are maybe a mother. I think you're a mother. Let me say you're a mother. You're a family person. You have uncles, you have brothers, you have sisters. What affects them affects you. So you can't come and tell me, I'm a media person and I have no connection with the Kenyan issues. I've heard Kenya Kwanza saying, we're not going to listen to media, we're listening to Kenyans. But remember, these are Kenyans who are also media. So let us also look at this language very clearly. And last but not least, Linda, we will not find a solution legislatively that will cure the human heart. People need to go back to God and actually kneel before God and be honest people. Professor has said, legitimate results being rejected by somebody simply because he has a few people. And somebody from Kenya Kwanza said it. Do you know, Linda, that if you run for presidential candidates, you cannot lack thugs to go to the streets to demonstrate. You cannot lack them. You can even buy. Violence can be bought. You can buy people to run with you to the street. The issue Raila Odinga needs to ask himself, and only God knows him and God, in his heart, what are his intentions for it? Are there some instruments through which this can be done? If he has gone to the streets, then eventually we are back to parliament. Could we not begin with parliament before going to the streets? Because if there are options which have been exhausted, are they sincere? Then I also criticize the issue of bipartisan approach. These things are bipartisan, that's why it becomes personality. Moi reached out to Raila and there were two people. Whatever they discussed, the ones who know. Kibaki also, they went to Kilaguni with Raila and they discussed two people. Whatever they discussed is all about them. Then again, Raila with Uhuru, handshake, two people. They were all about them. Maybe this time, there's a certain difference in what Ruto has done by saying, let us not meet to do any agreement with you. Let us have some people negotiating. And I want to urge these 14-member people, let us also put the national values at the core of the negotiation, because that can cure this issue of all elections are rejected. Who are you to reject an election passed by the Supreme Court? And Professor, we need to have good manners being brought in, national values, national ethos also being discussed during this nomination. Bring other partners other than the bipartisanism to make it multi-partisanism, to make this thing become a national conversation.
And perhaps bringing us back to what it is that Professor had alluded to on the question of morality, as well as just us having good manners. Though Dr. Kirigo says that, Linda, Raila is not the obstacle, but the electoral institutions are the problem. If we are to make them, good, make sure that the structures are well and the systems are well, then perhaps we'd not be talking about a hard-headed Raila today. Allow us to take a short break, gentlemen, and then we come back to that, Professor.
Wakati mwingine kama weekend, mimi najiachilia.
Hata ukumbuki hii story. Nikifika watu wangu watu wakinipokea na kupokeleka. Umeset the mood. Nimeset the mood. Naweza kupokeleka. Nikitumai kwamba mzima popote pale ulipo, nikikukaribisha katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi. Jina langu Elizabeth Mutuku. Katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi tunakupa nafasi kutangamana nao kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea. Siku nyingine tutapatana papa hapa umjue kiongozi mwingine.
Jiunge nasi toka hapa hadi ufuoni mwa bahari. Meli yetu itakapotua nanga kwa uhondo ribo ya riwaya hii mwisho wa kosa. Monica.
It's early morning in Maralal. Start your morning informed, educated, entertained, and above all, know your country. From the beautiful plains of Samburu County to the skyscrapers of Nairobi, Morning Cafe certainly got you covered. Indeed, a beautiful place to watch and certainly a moment of understanding and knowing your country. Indeed, to the remotest parts of every county. Join me, Linda Alela, every weekday from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
The diversity of Kenya's wildlife has garnered international fame.
This is pellets that we give to the tourists, the giraffes. We ration because we don't want the giraffes to eat too much of this. We want them to have more of the natural browse.
We may not always get the opportunity to go out to see the wildlife, but you'll never miss the opportunity to see it from the comfort of your couch.
This is home to animals that have been found out there either injured, abandoned, or confiscated from people who are holding them illegally.
Only on TV 47 Wildlife, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m.
Disability is a club that anyone can join.
I live with special needs. It means I have a limitation. There are things I can't be able to do personally myself.
And in our journey to talk about disability, we tell the stories of those with disabilities and even sit with specialists to understand what it means for those affected directly and indirectly.
Everybody's life, mine has also been faced with ups and downs.
If it becomes a self-stigmatized thing where you feel like you are judging yourself too harsh, you blame yourself, and you perceive that it happened because you failed.
Join me, Zainab Mohammed, on Beyond the Limit every Saturday at 7:30 p.m.
An entrepreneur is defined as someone who has the ability and desire to establish, administer, and succeed in a startup venture along with the risks entitled to it to make profits.
I'm a professional financier with a professional paper in banking. However, for fashion, it's something I've always loved ever since I was small.
Started as a baby business. It was all about, you have your machines, the haircuts, wear the heads, bring the scalps.
We wanted something that would remind us about prayer.
We have to send, or we have to, speak on behalf of Professor Fred Gola, who was left. He says, well, he has to rush somewhere, and Nairobi, when it rains, it can be bad. So allow us to release him, and we now come back to Professor Macharia Monene as well as Dennis Dobi, who are here to unpack, probably the last bits of this conversation before we close it. I know we have shifted gears away from the conversation of the economy, but not before I read this message from one of us who says, Linda, let us all accept that Hitler died 70 years ago, and the Germans are or he's asking, are Germans not feeding today? And I think perhaps to allude to the fact that it's important that this current government does not look so much towards to what was of the previous reign and everything. Let us focus on bringing that change that we promised to the people of Kenya. And gentlemen, as well, speaking to one of the biggest problems that we have at hand, and I'm glad that Professor somehow ushered us into that. That is onto this conversation of a possible aspect of posterity in terms of addressing these talks of maandamano every Monday. You're spoken about the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. President appears to extend an olive branch to say, you know what, let us quell this. But the kind of approach that the Kenya Kwanza team then would pick, or the members, is largely an approach of blame games. How is this process going to, yield any form of fruit if we're going to have these positions that we've talked about, the hardliner stands left, right, and center? It would be, ironical to imagine that anything would come out of it when we're saying, President, please speak, extend that olive branch, let's have a conversation, let's have a bipartisan approach. But at the same time, we keep pointing fingers at this very person who is spearheading these processes of maandamano in the country.
Linda, you posit an important conversation. And Professor alluded to the fact that unless the hearts of men are changed, then the Constitution is essentially just a mere shibboleth. It's a sheet of paper that none of us will respect. And unless the hearts of men govern themselves and we take away concepts of greed, personalization of politics and many other things, this country will never be as stable as we aspire to be. And when you look at this parliamentary discourse when it comes to electoral disputes, and you look essentially at even the achievements and the downfalls of the PPG process, one of the things and one of the areas that was still left vulnerable was the autonomy of IBC. I am the petitioner of the removal of the 4 IBC commissioners. And throughout the entire process in Parliament, and when the judicial team was set in place to investigate the same, I realized then IBC is still not fully autonomous. I realized that IBC is still subject to presidential manipulation in many of these things. You understand, at the end of the day. And that is one of the things that IPPG did not satisfy. And one of the things that the olive branch the president extended, which is not a handshake, was, let's discuss about one thing, and we call it paragraph 11. Let's discuss about the constitution of the selection panel for IBC. If that's something that we want to discuss about, let's discuss it. When you look at the Cherera 4, they were brought in almost 2 months before the elections. There's a whole judicial presidency, there are cases in court that have brought in the amendment of the selection panel, the Justice Mrima ruling that asked Parliament to amend to have the selection panel sit in a particular way, that then what it is that we call the commission might be autonomous and might be properly constituted and all that. And that's the same conversation that the president is bringing on board. But Professor alluded to one thing which is interesting. This bipartisan conversation, who is going to chair them? Already, Raila Odinga has started saying, if it's purely parliamentary, that it means it excludes me. But you shouldn't see it as that. You should really know that the president is out of this conversation, you're out of this conversation. These are Kenyans having this discourse. Are we really going to talk about politics instead of navigating the country back to its core issues, and that's the economy? And an inclusive economy is what this country must deliver. What this government must deliver is Kenyans keep on being told that there's economic growth. Currently it's 5.6, this and this, and they're wondering it's growing where? The core that this government, the core that the opposition must be interested in, cost of living. On an honest perspective. And Raila must appreciate that his handshake government left a mess. It took away the doctrine of the separation of powers. There was no accountability. Parliament was completely unable to oversee the executive. And once that breaks down, it means you have a rogue executive that can do anything that they please. And I pray that Parliament, we won't have a Parliament that doesn't oversee the executive. And I love the fact that the House rules were amended to allow cabinet secretaries to come and be asked questions. Again, I keep on saying, I keep on telling people, ODM is government. And we have 3 arms of government. Yeah. We have the parliamentary, we have judiciary, we have the executive. Yeah. You have ODM members of parliament who are in government. So can we just move away? The country has never been able to navigate away from politics. It's never been able, for the last 41 years, development and inclusive development has never really been the heartbeat of this nation. But for the first time, and this is what I'll tell Raila Odinga, for the first time you need to allow the country to grow. And advancing political risk is the reason why the survival, the first mandate of every government that comes into play, as long as it's opposing Raila Odinga, has been its survival. So funds then go to political survival.
Raila Odinga away from the picture. Do you have some essence of confidence in what Dennis speaks of, that, for the first time, perhaps in 41 years, then we'll have a government that, will counter-check itself, if you would want to call it that way. We'll have a government that ensures that the rule of law is upheld. We'll have a government that, allows for the freedom and the independence of certain, commissions and, certain sectors to prevail. That we'll have a government that, will perhaps put a stop to all the shenanigans that we have witnessed politically in the country. That we'll have a government, led by William Samoei Ruto, that really will bring that change that we've longed for, in 41 years, and not overlooking the democratic strides that we have made over years. That, of course, some of them have been brought to the fore by the likes of Right Honorable Raila Odinga and the efforts that they put.
Well, Ruto has the potential. And he's just beginning his presidency. Yeah. He's 6 months into the presidency. And, but he has no choice but to deal with the reality of the day. The reality of the day is somebody called Raila Amolo Odinga. Yeah. That's the reality. Okay. And we had one of these, his Odinga's supporters, followers, called Babu Ochieng. Yes. He said there are 4 governments, 4 branches of government. It's executive, parliament, judiciary, and Raila Odinga. So now, in fact, you can elevate that a little more. Yeah. There are 2 centers of power in Kenya right now. One is called Ruto.
And the other is?
The one who is officially legitimate and recognized by the constitution. That's the official. It's the center of power. You have the other one, unelected, but has a lot of authority over almost half of the voters.
So how does Ruto stamp authority?
Now, he has statutory powers. Yeah. He does not have authority over almost half of the people. Because now authority it is not necessarily statutory. Is that believability and the following. Whatever one thinks, Raila has at least 1 million people who will do anything he says. Whether right or wrong is not the issue. Whatever Raila says, you will see them sometimes say, akisema tutafanya. Akisema turuke tutaruka. So we have that 1 million or more. Actually there are more, but even if it's 500,000, or 100,000 people who are going to do anything just because he said it, then it is the president's job, of the legitimate president, to figure out how to handle this issue. Because it's an issue. And Raila is therefore the center of the other power. And that is why it is necessary to address the issue of attitude, Raila Odinga's attitude. Not all these commissions, and these are cosmetics.
It's largely not about them. It's about one individual.
It's one individual. These are cosmetics. So William Ruto says, okay, I concede. Can we have a discussion about the electoral process. Yeah, that's what he said.
A bipartisan approach. And
yeah, and they'll say so bipartisan, which kind of misleads because there are other players who are not excluded in that buy.
Yeah. And in real sense, it's referring to themselves. Okay.
So the others have complained and say, what about us?
What about us?
We're also players.
Okay.
You know, I think it was whoever advised him to use that word made a mistake. You know, so he could have said maybe inclusive or whatever it is.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you know, but Kenya Kwanza was waiting for Azimio to make its move. And Raila made his move, so he appointed his people. And then now Kenya Kwanza is saying, now that respond to that. So they're going to appoint people who are, you know, the same in a different way. And that's why we are saying, get somebody now to chair these two people, to supervise or moderate these people. But it goes back to what Raila wants, that those 7 people he appointed.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
The others are just talks. And whoever Ruto appoints, those 7 people.
Which we perhaps get to know about
today. Yeah. Those people, we simply do what Ruto wants. That's why they are going to be appointed there.
Yeah.
And for them to make headway, then there is something that needs to be done, to have a referee to say, convince them, hey, look. Because whatever they agree, those 2 camps, will be passed in Parliament, will be ratified. Now, I think I was trying to make a small point. See, Kenya sometimes has been a bad example, an example to others, maybe a good one and a bad one. The bad example, I think we influenced Donald Trump. And so you look at his behavior, he seems to have copied from here. And he had an interest in Kenya because he didn't like Obama. So whatever happens in Kenya, maybe we can. Now, the difference we have because Kenya copies the US a lot. We copied a lot of things. Even much of the 2010 Constitution is cut and paste of the US. It is back to the attitude of the people who are in charge. Had the US had people who did not believe in the Constitution they created, they'd be having a lot of problems. That's the main thing they had. They say, whatever it is, let's try to make it work. Have there been problems? Yes. Okay? There was an attempted theft of the election in 1800. Fortunately, sober-heads prevailed, but it was there. There have been many instances when somebody who had the most votes, electoral and college, did not necessarily get the votes because he didn't have the requisite 50% plus 1, whatever. And they went on and said, okay, they live to go on. And that's how actually democracy was grown. Even more recent times, Al Gore had more popular votes than because he failed in his state. But he has said, okay, he doesn't like it, but the court has said, okay, move on. In 2016, Hillary had more
votes,
than Donald Trump.
Right.
But the rules which Donald Trump used very well made him the president. And she said, okay, those are the rules. We don't like it.
Isn't it the kind of space that we want, in form of the elections that we speak of in the country, that in as much as you could be enjoying lots of numbers, these are the rules of the game and they stand, and therefore we're going to install Donald Trump as opposed to Hillary, simply because the numbers...
that's what I'm saying, right from the beginning. From 1787, when they crafted that document, they said these are the rules.
Yes.
The winner is what the college says, the electoral college. And the requirement was that you must get 50% of the electors.
Yes.
Not the electoral votes, of the electors. Plus 1.
That largely, Professor, is about their systems.
Yeah, they created that.
All that. If we are we not able to create strongholds of that nature?
No, we are not, because the people who create these things don't believe in them.
Yeah, they're the same politicians.
They're the same people.
Okay.
So they craft things
for the moment
to fix somebody.
Yes.
And to favor themselves. When it doesn't go that way, then they get rid of them. So that's why I say it's an attitude thing. We go back to the point. You agree on something, then whether you like it or not, you should abide by it. We have had situations where, if you look at the Guy Commission, it did its best that it could. But you could see there was also an attempt to push things almost in favor of some people and against others. That's why we had, including these foreign donors, whatever, the development partners. They were saying if the North side wins in 2005, the president should get out of office.
Yeah.
But the document was not about, it was supposed to be about, they changed the rules.
Yeah.
But they did not go the way they thought. So they got very angry. So they were really not genuine to the whole thing. The 2010 constitution, it went through because Kibaki and Raila agreed.
Yeah.
That's all. And the driver to that constitution was Raila. Yeah? Kibaki was going out, so let's get it out of there. Now, so if you look at that, if that's what was going on, then why go against what one shepherded? So that's why I keep on saying it is the attitude thing. It's not the rules we make.
Yeah.
It is not the amendments we create. It is not who is in that committee, the parliamentary committee which is going to sit outside and then go back. It's not that. If for some reason Raila says no to whatever they come up with, you are still going to have what? Problems. If Ruto says no, you are going to have what? Problem.
Is it not then, should we get to a space where we say, well, we are not able to control the right honorable Raila Odinga and accept for him to play until it is time for him to perhaps naturally exit?
For God to intervene?
I wrote an article.
Maybe. Just
I wrote
maybe.
an article in the Star.
Yeah.
And I said that Raila must accept to exit.
Is it him to accept, or it's for Kenyans to accept that will allow for him to play until
the first option
time?
is for you to accept that you have done enough, you have had it all, and it's time for you to exit the scene, or then you'll be exited by force.
You see what happened with Zimbabwe and the likes of Robert Mugabe, may his soul rest in eternal peace, refused totally to exit. Even when there was, pressure across, externally, internally, for him to exit, he refused. Fine, he was exited eventually. But at what point? At a point where, it was...
In Zimbabwe, they had a civilized coup.
Yeah, a civilized coup. Yeah. Just how civilized to exit a man who's already like 90-something years and, literally cannot do anything.
Because Professor alluded to something that you have to carefully listen to.
Yeah.
He alluded to a system behind the man. And the biggest benefit of Raila's reign is not Raila himself.
Okay.
I mean, Raila is satisfied as an old man.
Yeah.
It's the people behind him.
Okay.
His financiers.
All right.
People who want him to rock the system so that they can get something.
How do we delicately approach this such that then in the process of exiting this system, we do not then install, remnants of the same? Because again, classically, if you speak about Zimbabwe, then you'll speak of Mnangagwa, who was probably a beneficiary of the Mugabe reign, and therefore the same person was installed, and people kept asking just how much of a change will Zimbabwe then get to experience after the rooting out of Mugabe. I don't know whether they have witnessed any form of change that they would look at and say, this is change that was what, or it's typically the same face of Mugabe.
As I mentioned, the last 41 years, Kenya has not known better. And by the way, we have legislated all the bad manners. For example, this Mandamano, the violence has navigated outside the constitution. But the same violence is now finding its way into a bipartisan parliamentary process.
Yeah.
So exactly what is going to be birthed in that process? When Raila has said that for this conversation to be successful, return the Cherera 4, which is an impossible thing. That is a matter that has been overly adjudicated and judged by the courts. 3 of them resigned willingly. The appointing authority, at the end of the day, accepted their resignation. How then would you return to the scene, especially officers that were seen to offend the fidelity of the Constitution and their practice, at the end of the day? And when I was doing the petition is when I realized truly, and I think if you look at I think it was a commission essentially that was talking about the tenants of office, security of tenant office. I believe I'm forgetting the commission, and I read through it, and I realized it is not a joke to fire anybody just out of the blues in Kenya today. But then people are using the same protections and the same immunity that the Constitution has given them to do that which they please. But you ask a critical question.
Could we answer that after this break?
All right.
Could we answer that and then we come back and sum it up after this break?
You are watching TV 40.
Wakati mwingine kama weekend, mimi najiachilia.
Hata ukumbuki history. Nikifika watu wangu wakinipokea na kupokeleka. Umeset the mood. Nimeset the mood. Naweza kupokeleka. Nikitumai kwamba mzima popote pale ulipo, nikikukaribisha katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi. Jina langu Elizabeth Mutuku. Katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi tunakupa nafasi kutangamana nao kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea siku nyingine. Tutapatana papa hapa umjue kiongozi mwingine.
Jiunge nasi toka hapa hadi ufuoni mwa bahari. Meli yetu itakapotua nanga kwa uhondo ribo ya riwaya hii mwisho wa kosa. Monica.
It's early morning in Maralal. Start your morning informed, educated, entertained, and above all, know your country. From the beautiful plains of Samburu County to the skyscrapers of Nairobi, Morning Cafe certainly got you covered. Indeed, a beautiful place to watch and certainly a moment of understanding and knowing your country. Indeed, to the remotest parts of every county. Join me, Linda Alela, every weekday from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
The diversity of Kenya's wildlife has garnered international fame.
This is pellets that we give to the tourists, the giraffes. We ration because we don't want the giraffes to eat too much of this. We want them to have more of the natural browse.
We may not always get the opportunity to go out to see the wildlife, but you'll never miss the opportunity to see it from the comfort of your couch.
This is home to animals that have been found out there either injured, abandoned, or confiscated from people who are holding them illegally.
Only on TV 47 Wildlife, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m.
Disability is a club that anyone can join.
I live with special needs. It means I have a limitation. There are things I can't be able to do personally myself.
And in our journey to talk about disability, we tell the stories of those with disabilities and even sit with specialists to understand what it means for those affected directly and indirectly.
Everybody's life, mine has also been faced with ups and downs.
If it becomes a self-stigmatized thing where you feel like you are judging yourself too harsh, you blame yourself, and you perceive that it happened because you failed.
Join me, Zainab Mohammed, on Beyond the Limit every Saturday at 7:30 p.m.
An entrepreneur is defined as someone who has the ability and desire to establish, administer, and succeed in a startup venture along with the risks entitled to it to make profits.
I'm a professional financier with a professional paper in banking. However, for fashion, it's something I've always loved.
How he handles.
All right, gentlemen, we are back, Professor. We are in the last laps. Perhaps in about 10 minutes or so, we should be out of this vicinity. You wanted to answer my question?
I said, you asked a question whether it's time for Raila to exit or not. You know, for the last 41 years, we've been legislating the desires of Raila. The violence is navigated outside the constitution, then it's accommodated for conversations, then a law is made to essentially satisfy it.
How is it Raila's desire to look at making sure that we have, a formation of the IEBC that is good enough to accord us a commission that, again, will be as well good enough to oversee us through an election? How is it the desire of Raila to speak to the high cost of living, concerns that have gotten a majority of Kenyans joining him with their sufurias on the head to say that really we have a problem? How is it the desire of Raila Odinga to perhaps speak to, these commissioners that you say have exited, some of them willingly by, virtue of resigning, and some of them, of course, being, uninstalled after that, legal process that was taken. Yet they perhaps feel like, if the Constitution says that it is for Chebukati to declare the election, at least there should be about 4 people who consent. And maybe that's the reason why we have 7 people in the IEBC, such that when 4 are not in agreement, then it means that there's a problem. But we're still go ahead to install the president upon declaration and acceptance by only 3 commissioners.
You've spoken well. If Raila had the interest of dealing with the cost of living from 2018 to 2022, he would have benefited the country and his people.
Yeah.
If Raila wanted to deal with the cost of living, him being the ex-MP of Kibra, he would have dealt with the adverse
levels of
poverty.
Yeah.
Nyanza today is run more by NGO than anything else. He has governors across the place that he can start to show us the template of dealing with the cost of living within there. He's mobilizing people to the streets when they should be planting. So we have then discovered that his interest is not the prosperity of people. Number 2, if Raila really wanted an autonomous and independent IBC, then he wouldn't be implicated in the nature that he was implicated with the tampering of IBC the last election. At the end of the day, when you had the witness submissions, the name of Azimio was the one that was featuring. He was part of the last government at the end of the day. So then we must understand that political interests are born personally, they're private. Raila has tried to navigate the country to legislate presidency and governance for him. For the last 41 years, we have been forming and performing laws and amending laws to try and accommodate the interests of Raila. And sincerely enough, we have done a large extent to that. And I think it is important for Raila Odinga to realize that Kenyans have been benevolent enough. Kenyans have been kind enough. Kenyans have died to accommodate his interests. Kenyans have been displaced to accommodate his interests.
Behind the right
Kenyans
of
have
Raila
been poor to accommodate his interests. And it is time that he realizes that the sacrifice of this nation can no longer accommodate him. He must exit the seat. But for him to exit the seat, how will it be? Is the bipartisan process an African India process whereby we are seeing we are unable to deal anymore with this man called Raila Odinga. So let us try the bipartisan process. But again, what is it going to birth? What kind of expansionism are we going to continue doing to our constitution to again entertain the personal and private interests of Raila Odinga? My approach will be one. Power of this country rests with William Samoei Ruto.
Okay.
Even from a spiritual perspective, he is the one that will establish a new political system that will navigate past the man called Raila Odinga, who at the end of the day has introduced misery and impunity to
to this country for the last 41 years.
Professor Macharia Muneni, as you close for us, first two things. What he speaks of, that the power, then goes back to President William Ruto. I don't know whether he has some essence of knowledge, wisdom, or mechanisms, or structures that he's going to employ that then would successfully, address what is that Dennis raises. We have been asking ourselves now. There are levels where we've gotten and said, Raila sasa amekwisha. Then before you know it, there's that aspect of him metamorphosizing himself, and boom, something new is there. Do you think then the president has some level of prowess and political ways of managing the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, different from what we have on the table right now? And speaking of that, behind Raila Odinga, away from the 6 million Kenyans, there are a battery of lawyers, great brains, legal minds that are alluding to what it is that he speaks of. You want to tell me these ones are foolish enough not to realize what we all are realizing?
No, they are not foolish. Maybe they are too clever.
Okay. That perhaps this is what it is.
It's an ecosystem that they benefit from.
Okay.
You want to say that at the end of the day, there's Raila is an ecosystem that some people feed from.
They feed on.
Raila himself can be tired, but Raila is told, no, this is not the time to resign. We want you to push this government so strongly that we can get something to eat. Some people know that even by age, Raila is exiting the stage. And they don't want him to exit if they don't have a bite of government.
Close it for us.
So, and everything depends on William Ruto. He is the president of the Republic of Kenya. He has a battery of advisors. Some of them not very good. But he has a battery of advisors on almost everything.
Yeah.
And whether he listens to them or not is another matter.
Okay.
And because these sometimes principals have advisors whom they don't listen to. Or sometimes they listen and then something else happens. So whoever is advising William Ruto needs to be very careful and to prefer advice that really in the long run is in the interest of the country. But it's up to William Ruto, not the advisors, and not even Raila, to handle this situation. And the way he handles it will determine whether or not he's a success or a failure.
Yes.
Raila's mission at present, it appears, is to make Ruto a failure. And if he's a failure, then he has no business being president.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the... Now, for Ruto now is to counter that and say, first of all, he's in control of the country. Right now, the image has been created that he's not in control of the country. So he has to show that he's in control of the country. How he does it is another matter. And that's where the wisdom will come in. And his team, who is helping him to think through. He has a National Security Council. I don't know what it's doing, but it's supposed to be helping him so, go through these things.
Yeah.
He has ministers who are essentially advisors. Some of them, they need to tone down their mouths. They speak awkwardly. I think there was an earlier talk about what to say or not say. There are proportionalities.
Yeah.
Even if it is the truth, Dennis.
Find a way of, even if you're not
there's proportionality. There are things you do not say in certain occasions. And they seem to lose that, which then tends to question the maturity. So, but it boils down to William Ruto. If he does nothing to contain the situation, to show that he's in charge, he's finished.
Okay.
If he does something, which he should, I don't know what, then he should be ready for blames. He'll be blamed for everything and anything. So the question is, should he be blamed for doing nothing?
Or for having done
or
something?
For having done something.
Okay.
But the buck stops with him, not with Raila, not with Gachagua. You see, Gachagua says, the president and I.
I am in charge of protecting the president.
So you say, wait a minute, there is only one president. There are not two presidents.
Okay.
There's one president.
It's a presidency. They were voted together.
I mean, these are some things that may need to be sorted out internally.
Yes.
in order for for the president to really be the president.
Okay.
And to be seen to be in charge, to be in control of the country, and not Raila. Right now, Raila looks to be the one in charge.
Okay. Yeah. Gentlemen, in the best interest of time, allow us to close it at this very point. It's exactly 44 minutes past the top of the hour, 15 minutes to the top of the hour, and we shift gears to a different conversation on matter finances and businesses ups and downs. Very, very important. Remember, we are at that space where we're talking about the economy of the country. And so beyond looking at what the government is going to do, we also need to be ready to make sure that we work along with the government for purposes of getting us to a space where we say now we have some essence of economic equilibrium. Dennis and Dombi, thank you so much for speaking.
Thank you so much.